Welcome everyone, this is Michael Gibbs. I hope you're all doing well today. If anybody could let me know who's on the call. I know we just kicked off the call and we didn't email our list, so it may take a few minutes for people to come. But anyway, welcome. Welcome, Jay and Austin. Good morning. How are you? Hi, Ali, Nemri. Welcome all. I'm just going to let everybody know there's approximately a 30-second delay in between the time that I actually speak versus the time that you can actually hear me or something to that effect. So just be understanding of that if you say something and you don't hear back from me for a moment or two, that's the reason why. In any case, we're super welcome to have you here. Does anyone in the audience have any cloud architect career questions, things you should study, things you should learn? How to get your first cloud computing job or anything to that effect? If so, please let me know. This is a completely free session for at least 1 hour where I will answer any questions you have about building your best career. Good morning, Chris. Great point, Ali. So yes, I'm happy to answer your question. What would be the difference between a cloud engineer and a cloud architect interview questions? Great point. So when we're dealing with cloud engineers, we're actually dealing with the people that are going to be the people that are configuring these things, the builders of these things. So you're going to do two things with a cloud engineer. First, you have to determine, does the person have the correct attitude to be in your building? Can they work with others? Can they be a team player? All these important things. And then you have to determine if they have the technical competency. So let me tell you the difference between the architect interviews and the engineer interviews. The cloud architect is a cross between a business executive and an engineer. So in a cloud architect interview, what's going to happen is we're going to get really detailed to try and determine your levels of business acumen. We may have you deliver a presentation as part of the interview process. We're going to ask you more behavioral questions to see how you act in certain situations. We're going to ask you questions and we're going to be looking for the depth of your answers. What is the technology? How does the technology work? Why do you use it? How would you present that technology to me? Because that's what the cloud architect does. Since the architect is going to be in front of the client, we're going to listen for the gravitas or the executive presence in your voice. We're going to listen to the verbal tones and the inflection in your voice. We're going to check for sales skills if you're an architect. By comparison, and we're going to still ask your technical competency, but it's more about what is things, how do they work, and why do you use them? Because as an architect, you're a designer. So as an architect, we're going to ask, tell me about how you designed a solution for X, Y, Z problem, for example. So that's the architect way. Now on the engineering work, now this is something that's basically a little bit different. We still have to ask you how things work because you can't troubleshoot things if you don't know how they work. So understand that. But we're going to be more detail oriented as an engineer, asking you if you're familiar with using APIs, do you know how to script? We're going to be asking you questions about your automation techniques, do you know Terraform and things like that. So for the engineer, we're going to get really detailed in the weeds on the tech. And for the architect, we're going to get really detailed in your presentation skills, your business acumen. And that's why the careers have such different opportunities. Both are good careers. Here was what I will tell you. As an engineer, you're going to work really hard. You're going to work a lot of hours. And as an architect, you're going to work less. You're going to get paid a lot more because, as a rule, the closer you are to the customer, the better your pay is going to be. The closer you are to the customer, the more rapidly your career can progress. Because when organizations look at their personnel, the people that bring in revenue are typically the people that get paid the most, because without sales, no organization can survive. So just understand the difference. Architecture, much more business oriented. Engineering, much more tech oriented. And engineering, we might actually ask you how to do something. And we might even have you configure something on an interview to determine what your capabilities are. Whereas with architecture, we might have you present, speak, that sort of thing. So Ali, I hope I answered your question. If you've got more questions about that, I will be more than happy to go in any level of depth you desire. Adams, welcome. Good morning. Jay and Austin, even though note taking is personal, how do you take notes, digital handwritten? How do you organize all the information to be used constructively? Well, Jay and Austin, that's a great question. So, I take written notes when I meet with clients, and I take written notes for a reason. If you actually look at the data, when people communicate to us and we write down using handwriting or printing that we do by our hand, what ultimately happens is we actually activate a part of the brain called the reticular activating system. And the reticular activating system is typically used in emergencies, but it helps the body remember things in a very detail-oriented way. So here's the way you can think of the reticular activating system in general. Let's say you were driving in your car and everything's good, and all of a sudden you see a small animal in front of you on the road. The reticular activating system of the brain says, "Wake up! Wake up!" Makes you hit the brakes to protect the animals, or swerve or change directions or whatever you need to do. Well, the reticular activating system is incredibly useful when it comes to remembering things. And handwriting actually activates the reticular activating system. To put it into context, for those of you that are married, how many of you don't remember your wedding day? Of course you remember your wedding day, even though it could have been a long time ago. Certain moments in your life that were tied to emotions, wedding day, maybe your prom, your first girlfriend, whatever. You remember these things. And why do you remember these things? Because the reticular activating system is involved. So when I take notes, I ask questions and I take notes. I always use paper. I do it for another reason, though. I'm an architect. I'm in front of customers. No executive wants to see you typing in your computer. They want you to look them in the eye and have a conversation. So for that, I try to never bring a computer with me for anything other than PowerPoint slides. So Jay and Austin, I hope I answered your question there. Michael Williams, congratulations on the Google Cloud Engineer credentials. That's fantastic. I remember when I did my Google certification and really thought they did a very good job in the process of creating those certifications. One of the best in the cloud, because they actually kept it somewhat industry standard, and they had case studies and scenarios, so I think they did a really, really great job, Michael. So love the way Google actually organized their certifications. There's actually architecture and engineering in them as opposed to some of the other certifications, so congratulations. Now, Michael, do you have any questions or anything that we can do to help you get to your goals? Okay, who has the next question for me? Or would anybody like a deeper answer to their questions? Well, I'll wait for the next question to come in. There's usually a bunch of them. And all the people that are here, as we get more questions, we'll definitely find ways to give you more answers. Okay, Nelson, let's do anything we can to help you. Hi, I hope all is well. You have a medical background. Wonderful, so do I. And you're new to cloud, and you're having trouble studying using Udemy. What should you focus on? Well, okay, I'll be honest, Nelson. First, I started by practicing internal medicine. I was a nurse practitioner, and I transitioned into the cloud. Having trouble learning from Udemy? Well, there's lots of good reasons for that. I'll give you some of the medical and neurological reasons from that, and then after that, we'll basically give you my suggestions. So there are three kinds of learning types. Three. There are visual, auditory, and kinesthetics. Visual learners like me learn by watching or seeing things. We say things like, I see what you mean. We typically have things organized. Visual people like me can only learn from video. Only video. Now, auditory people, by comparison, learn by listening. And auditory people can basically learn via audio. So the kind of silly PowerPoint slides that I see with audio voiceover without a person talking, but it's just a person and slides, that is acceptable for auditory people, which are about 30% of the population. 30% of the population can listen to video or listen to audio and do well, like PowerPoint slides with audio. But if you're a visual person, you will not learn that way. Now, the last type of person is actually the kinesthetic type of learner. And the kinesthetic learner learns by doing, so kind of loud. So that's part of it. The second thing is, I don't really believe that any training program that just pushes content at you and expects you to learn it without the ability to ask questions can ever help you. I'll let you know what we do with our students. When we do training with our students, we have live training sessions via Zoom twice per week. And the reason we do with our students live training sessions twice per week is it's inevitable when you're coming at this from another perspective, you're not going to know everything or understand everything. And even if you come from tech, you're still not going to understand everything. And we feel the ability to ask questions is so critical that to your career that we don't do anything for which case we don't have at least 2 live multiple hours per sessions per week. So, Nelson, my advice to you as a medical person is as follows. The cloud is nothing more than a virtualized network in a data center. And trying to learn the cloud without learning the network in the data center is completely impossible. I've interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people and none were hireable. The reason none were hireable is when I have taught them how to take the things from the data center and move it to the cloud, none of them knew. And that's 90% of what we do as cloud architects is cloud migration. So you need to understand the network and the data center and then understand the cloud. So Nelson, here's what I would recommend. If you're in our training program, and we have a 16-week training program where we take people from start to finish, and it's about 250 hours, and we're pretty successful getting people hired in the end. If you're not one of our students, I would suggest you learn networking. Maybe a CCNA, a CCNP directly from Cisco. Then I would suggest you basically work on the cloud thing. And realize that with less than the certified solution architect professional, it's probably going to be hard to get a cloud architect job. Also, our recommendation is don't do multiple associate certifications with AWS. So certified solution architect associate, certified solution architect professional as a rule. Of course, I don't exactly know which cloud computing career you want, and we're going to need that to give you better information. But the professional is the minimum. Don't take 5 different associate level certifications. They're not going to help your portfolio. They're going to make your resume look unfocused. Then the next thing is, you may have this from medicine. You definitely need to work on your executive presence. Emotional intelligence matters is critical. Presentation skills are critical. From the healthcare world, you probably have a good degree of empathy, which is going to work well. And from healthcare, you're going to do that. What we do, and I wasn't trying to turn this into an advertising session for us, but what we do is we've got a 16-week program, which has got about 250 hours, in which case we take people from start to finish. It's impossible to learn the cloud unless you understand the network and the data center. So we teach all the things that make the cloud possible. And if you're not with us, learn everything that makes the cloud possible. And then here's what we do. We basically have our students build in our data center every piece of technology that makes the cloud work. And then we have our students build the cloud. And that's how you actually learn how to use the cloud. Not by doing a little lab like turning on an EC2 instance. We have our students build the cloud. And then when we're done that, we do case studies and work together. Hi, Derek. So welcome to see you. So that's our process. And you can see what our lessons are directly on our website if you chose to do them on your own. And you could do that. But this is what we do. This is our training program. Here's a coupon code for 20% off. And if you're curious about it, I'll even leave our office's phone number here. But in any case, whether you're with us or whether you're not with us, learn the network, learn the data center, and then you're going to be good to go. Okay, so I'm starting to see a bunch of questions. So let me start answering them. And Nelson, if you have more questions, please let me know and I will answer them. So the next question on the list that I see is, Harry, if I want to get a cloud security role, can I just learn the security services offered by AWS? Harry, the answer is absolutely not. The security services offered by AWS are about 10% of what an organization would actually use, and you need to have real knowledge in security. When we're training security people, they need for the cloud, they need to have at least CISSP or CEH level security knowledge, plus a certified solution architect professional. That's pretty much bare minimum to move into cloud security. The AWS Advanced Security Certification is basic, basic, basic. It's like this much of what you actually need. I mean, literally that much. So big organizations, the kind of organizations I work with, they're going to be using a hybrid mix of some AWS things, maybe Shield, for example, which works really well. Then they're going to be using firewalls and IDS systems from the marketplace. Then they're going to be using things like network ACLs and security groups, which are ACL. Then they're going to put host-based firewalls and anti-malware protections on things. So it's going to be a combination, Harry, of all the heavy, robust security things in the industry, plus the cloud services and even the cloud remediation services and other things that you're going to do on your own. So I would say the AWS services for security, Harry, are about 10% of the package. So Harry, if you've got more questions about how to become a cloud security architect, you can ask, or a cloud security engineer. I've been in the security business and the network business forever, and we've got a lot of people focusing on becoming cloud security architects with programs that we've built. So I'm more than happy to answer any more questions there. Okay, next question on the list. Hasma Manawari. You're working your towards cloud engineer. Great. You're working as a network engineer and have done training in AWS Associates. Okay, so Hasma, how much network background do you have? And what I mean by that, do you have and I don't like to use certifications as a baseline, but do you have above a CCIE or CCNP level knowledge of networking or better? And what I mean by CCNP knowledge of network or better is, how comfortable are you with routing? How much traffic engineering do you know? How much BGP do you know, meaning the ability to do IBGP and EBGP? How familiar are you with route reflectors? How familiar are you with confederations? How familiar are you with making, if you've got equal cost links, changing the weight, changing the local preference, prepending the AS path, changing the MAD, leaking more specific routes and route aggregation. These are the kind of minimum level of network things that you would need to be doing on the cloud. So then there's that. And after that, the next thing was generally speaking, the Certified Solution Architect Associate. While it's a pretty challenging exam, it typically is not enough to get hired unless you've got a lot of experience. So I don't necessarily know exactly what your, what's the word I was looking for? I don't exactly know what exactly the role is. I don't exactly know the depth of your network background. So if you give me a little more background in your network background, I can definitely help you with more depth. But that would be the generic recommendations I would make without knowing more. But I don't like generic recommendations. I like to make things that can make meaningful changes in your life. So please let me know, and I'll give you more. Nelson, if you could find a real solutions architect internship, it would definitely be helpful. Real solutions architect internships are as follows. You go in there, you actually have access to someone that's able to train you and coach you, and they work with you on a daily basis to teach you things, and you do certain things in the back end. If all you're doing is configuring the management console or the CLI or writing shell scripts, then it's going to be a waste of your time and the time that you could be spent doing something else. I have an internship mentorship program with my Cloud Architect Career Development Program, which basically gives people all the experience that employers are going to care about. I also recommend internships, and they can be great, but only if they're teaching you whatever your goal is. So if you want to be an architect and the internship is configuring things all day, that's not helping you. This is an architect, you're a designer, not a configurer. So all my thing is find out what you'll be doing, find out who's governing the interns. If it's a leader in the business that's doing the internship, great. I used to work with my own interns directly. And why? Because if they were going to do time with me, I didn't want them to work with anybody else. I was the leader. But lots of places people have junior people mentoring interns. So you got to be really careful about an internship. I actually made a video on how to select an internship. It's on my YouTube channel, and that it was about 3 months ago, but you can definitely find it under upload. So I can highly recommend viewing that. Internships can be great or they cannot be great. So that's really where my head is at. So Pistol Grips Vlogs, real quick answer. My students that are in my program that want to start doing labs with their lab partners can do it after they do some of the prerequisites. We have some prerequisites initially because we train cloud architects, and a cloud architect is a hybrid business executive and technical position. And in our experience, if we only let people do labs on the first day and start working on the tech piece, they miss all the other pieces and then are not hireable. It's easier for me to get a less technically competent person with better speaking skills, better soft skills, better emotional intelligence hired at a better salary than the best engineers. So for architects, we intentionally force a couple of hours of baseline knowledge long before we do labs. So Pistol Grip Vlogs, people can do it pretty quickly. I have students that can get to the labs in the second day, but they just have to do the prerequisite work first. And it's only a couple of hours, but those couple hours are really critical. Okay, Jay and Austin, I'm reading through your thing. Stunning. And Luther, I definitely have to address your thing. I want to save you months of time, and time equals money. So I'll get to you very shortly. And then Jay Stan, I'll get you as well. So Jay and Austin, I can give you an example of me. I had invested about $100,000 to become a nurse practitioner, which was my first job. I was a nurse practitioner, and then I found networking. And when I found networking, I thought networking was the best thing I've ever done. Literally, I was like so excited by networking, I loved it. And I had this $100,000 of like that I'd spent for school, and I said, well, I still have an education, it's still useful, and it's still helpful. And Pistol Grips Vlogs, reach out to Chris if you're struggling for that. He'll be able to help you. Chris can possibly pop in here. So I just loved networking. So you know what I did? I said, you can't do what you don't love and do it forever, and you've got to do what you love. Mark Twain said it best: when you make your vacation your vocation or your job, you'll never work a day in your life. And you know what I got to tell you, when I left healthcare, which I love, and I started working in tech, I don't think I've ever worked a day, ever. And I put in a lot of hours, but I don't know if I've ever worked. And I've been paid double or triple outside of healthcare in tech than I was. So paying $10,000 to $15,000 isn't that much. The average cloud architect earns $600 a day. A good one earns double that or more. So Jay and Austin, you got to do what makes you happy. I will tell you, if you move into cloud, anything that you did with Juniper Networks will not be wasted. The cloud is a virtual network in a data center, and any of the work that you did, any of the NAT, and I know that I mean NAT is more than just the internet, but any of the NAT, any of the QoS policies you worked with, any of the routing that you did, whether it be IGPs like OSPF, IBGP, eBGP, any of the work that you've done with regards to traffic engineering, all of that is really part of the cloud architect skill set. So realistically speaking, $10,000 for networking and a couple $1,000 for cloud training is, and we're much cheaper than that intentionally, but it's really nothing when you actually compare that to the cost of a career. A cloud architect earns more than a physician, and it costs a physician, $250,000 to go to school and about 11 years of time where they're not earning anything. So think about it this way. Even if it was $15,000 to $20,000 to be a cloud architect, in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to building a career, that's not a lot. I have students that have paid $20,000 to $30,000 just for a data science bootcamp, and it's done great wonders for them. So the point is, I think that having that background still going to the cloud will put you in a great place. So, Jay Stan, what do I think of obtaining the CCNP with a focus on security and identity management? Jay Stan, what is your goal career? Is your goal career networking or security or cloud? That will determine. But I wouldn't, and as much as I love Cisco, and I'm one of the and I'm one of the original Cisco certified internet experts, I would do Cisco for routing and switching. I would do the CISSP or the CEH for security. I might even do this. I might go even do the CCNP Enterprise, for example. And those are the kind of things that I would do. For Cisco would be routing. Security, I would go to the industry people. Who are the security experts in the industry? Either the CEH or the CISSP or the Offensive Security Professional. They're the three security certifications that matter. So that's what I would do. Stan, if you want to be a cloud security architect. So you're going to need a certified solution architect professional. You're going to need a real security cert like the CEH or the CISSP. You're going to need to have some real security knowledge that's going to help get you there. And you're going to need business acumen because you're going to be dealing with executives and designing systems to protect their things. So you're going to have to show the ROI of what you're doing. Lots of presentation skills, lots of emotional intelligence, lots of executive training, executive presence, that kind of thing. That's the skill set to be a cloud security architect. You can basically see a list of how we train our architects at our page. Syllabus is publicly available to see. You'll see that while we do have AWS training in there, about 50 hours of it, the other 250 hours of our training is dedicated towards other things. Because we have to focus on what's necessary to get hired when we work with people. And what is most important to work with people is making sure that they're in a position to get everything they need and they know how to do the job. So I hope I answered your question. If you've got more questions, Stan, I am happy to answer them. Serenivis. Serenivis, I am not a DevOps professional. And because I am not a DevOps professional, I don't want to answer that. We do have a DevOps program in development. And bear with me a minute, my screen just blanked out. Now it came back. But the person that's doing the DevOps program development is working in the industry for well over 20 years. We're not like certification providers. We don't make courses or advise on things that we don't know the answer to. Lots of people would basically happily do that. We only provide guidance for places where we're really knowledgeable. So, Serenivis, I wish I knew a lot more about DevOps careers, but I don't. I focus primarily on architecture careers or networking careers, so I don't want to give you misinformation. Apologies. Asif Ahmed, how can you get access to the previously recorded Cloud Architect Experience at Home? We don't share those recordings. We do those recordings, and they're not to be shared. We do them once per week for free. So if you want to join one of the free webinars that we do, like the Cloud Architect Experience webinar, feel free to join another one, but we don't share them. We want people to come back and learn. Okay, Silas James, could you please discuss infrastructure assessment at the customer site prior to a cloud migration? Okay, Silas James, well, now we're talking architecture. So realistically, here's the process. It begins with, meeting with the executives, the CEO, the CIO, the CTO, those folks, and getting buy-in for the fact that they want to move to the cloud and the things that they desire. Then it involves asking them for access to the resources, cooperation of their people, being able to give you their business goals, their strategies, and their vision, because the technology needs to solve that. First and foremost, when you're dealing with it, is what is the executive one, because that's the strategy, the direction of the business. Your system design must solve a business challenge or make the business more efficient. Organizations don't buy tech because they like it, they buy it to be more efficient from a business perspective. Then, after that, and Luther, I've got to get to your question. Someone from my team just reminded me I missed it. It's super important, so please hang on for 1 minute, Luther. So then we typically give our students a questionnaire that's got about 100 questions of things to ask. Everything from the performance of their systems to their baselines to the memory, CPU, flows, everything. Network security, you got to assess everything. Then you're going to have to do some looking at the network diagrams they have. Then you're going to have to read whatever architectural diagrams they have. Then you're actually going to do some exploratory things. And yes, AWS has tools, but you're going to have to do a manual process too. Look at it this way, you're going to need a team of a lot of people. If you're dealing with a big bank, you might need a team of 20 people, and they might need to spend 6 months just trying to figure out exactly what the infrastructure is just so they can move it out. So that it could be that much of a process, Celeste James. So really it's about knowing everything they have, how everything they have works, what's critical to the organization, what's working well to the organization, what's not working well. Move the things that are working well over, things that are not, re-architect, redesign, rehost, replatform, whatever is in the best interest of the country and the company. So that's kind of what you're doing there, James Sillis. Hope I answered your question there. And if you've got more questions, please feel free to ask. In the meantime, Luther said you were studying for your cloud practitioner cert, and I don't think you should ever do the cloud practitioner cert, Luther, or anyone. I don't see any point in that certification at all. That certification is almost as challenging as the Certified Solution Architect Associate. Equally challenging, I would say, because AWS makes every exam hard. The AWS Cloud Practitioner is pretty much a non-starter for getting hired anywhere, but it'll still take you 2 to 3 months of your time. We'd rather see you invest 2 to 3 months of your time in the Certified Solution Architect and then go straight to the professional if that's what you want to do. But we advise always skipping the Cloud Practitioner because it doesn't provide any benefit to you in your career unless you just want to be a sales rep, in which case then the Cloud Practitioner is okay, though we'd still recommend the Certified Solution Architect Associate. So we would advise you to strongly against doing anything with that Cloud Practitioner and go to something that's the next. So Luther, if you're still here and you want to tell me your actual goal, I will happily build you a map for you, but my recommendation is for the most part for anyone to avoid the Cloud Practitioner and go straight to the Associate. Pistol goes, wow, would it be better to apply for positions through a network of people? And like LinkedIn or Indeed, Pistol Grips blog, your best approach is to use executive recruiters. And the reason your best approach to use is executive recruiters is they can help you bypass HR. The recruiter will say, hi, I've got this person, Pistol Grips. Pistol Grips is really smart, they're likable, they work well, good attitude, good capabilities. Go speak to the Mr. Hiring Manager. And they bias me to like you and you avoided HR. So the best way to do this is through recruiters. We use recruiters whenever possible with our students. Then we also use networks and social media channels as well because it's helpful. We also want you to find your own recruiters and also even apply for jobs. So it's a four-pronged approach. Use your network and use all the other things. So Hazma, I think you had before I get to that. So Nemria Isaf, I didn't see that you asked a question earlier. If you're want to learn how to get your first cloud architect job, which I saw, I'm going to give you 2 options. And bear with me 1 second. I'm going to find you the link for this. So, and we're actually doing one tomorrow. Twice per week, we have a 1 hour, or well, it's more of a 2-hour webinar. In the first 1 hour, we teach you everything you need to know to get hired. What hiring managers desire, what to study, what to learn, what certifications to do, what to be on your resume, what to get off of your resume, things to say in an interview. We do that completely free on Mondays and Thursdays. I'm going to paste the link to register for this. It's completely free. We're having another one tomorrow. The process is as follows. Certification is about 10% of what's necessary to get hired. There's another 90% that matters. The 90% that matters is, I'll tell you from the technical perspective, and then I'll tell you from the non-technical perspective. The non-technical perspective is at least 50% of what matters. The non-technical perspective is your presentation skills, your emotional intelligence, your interview skills, those sort of things. Your writing skills, your business acumen, ROI modeling, your attitude, that's the 50%. That's non-technical. As an architect, that's more important than the technical by maybe 1%. The technical components are, how do the systems work? How would you actually design these systems? How do they integrate together? So these are kind of those things that are really critical. So on the tech side, what it is, how it works, and why you use it. What are the strengths and weaknesses of each architectural approach? How do you go from the data center to the cloud? How do you architect it from a lift and shift? How do you architect it to a cloud native? All of these things are those kind of critical skills. Almost none of it is the things that's part of the certification that's like how to configure things from a management console or the CLI or the API. They are cloud engineer jobs, which are great, but they are not cloud architect jobs. So I hope I answered your question there. Luther, I'm so happy you're still here. Yes, and Luther, if you can actually tell me your goal career, I'm more than happy to guide you as well. I just, anytime we can save you, anytime it's good. The average cloud architect earns $600 a day. A really good one earns double that. So we don't like people doing things like the cloud practitioner, because if it costs them 3 months, they're effectively losing $36,000 in terms of earnings they could make if they were working at $600 a day, and a lot more if they're more senior. So that's why we try and avoid those certifications and pick just the winners for you. So Luther, if you've got more questions, please feel free to ask. Who else has the next question? You got it, Luther. Anybody else have questions for me? How do you join our session tomorrow? Very simply. All you have to do is click on this link and register. And what'll happen is you'll be registered, and then you'll be sent an email, both an automated email as soon as you register for that, as well as we'll send you a reminder email that'll go out tonight and again 1 in the morning to make sure that you attend. So that's how you'll find out for the session tomorrow. And Prince, we'd love to have you join us, as well as everyone else on this call if you desire. Who else has a question for me? So Pistol Grips Vlogs, is it possible to get a job in a month? I don't know enough about your current position under the auspices of the name Pistol Grips Vlogs to actually be able to answer that honestly. I believe you're one of my students, but you use a different name as my student, so I can tell you based upon your actual name. But generally speaking, I think you became a student in my program within the last 2 weeks. We have a 16-week program. It's about 16 weeks to realistically get through, from beginning to end, to get hired. So I don't think you've been in there that long. And, it depends on how much time, effort, and speed you can actually get through it. If you can put in 10 hours a day, is it possible in a month? It depends on exactly how much your technical capability is and your soft skills. Those soft skills and communication skills will matter more to get your job, because when we interview people, it's as follows. 50% of a patient or a client, a candidate scores their attitude, emotional intelligence, communication, and the other 50% is technical competency. So it depends how fast we can get that right. So Pistol Grips Vlogs, if you want to send a message on Slack with your actual name, then we can give you a better answer. Jay and Austin, what have been some realistic timelines in your students in the career development role? So what I can say is this. I've been coaching people to get their first tech job now for well over 2 decades in networking and other forms of tech. I've been privately coaching people for years after I retired from Cisco. Now, saying all of this, it's a 16-week program, and typically speaking, that's about right to get someone from the start of the program to hired. Now, if someone has no tech background whatsoever, it might take 6 months to 8 months to basically move into these roles. These are big roles, they're high-paying roles. If someone's got some tech background and they have the time to do it, it's relatively easy, something around the 3 to 4 month range, although we say 4 months. I will tell you, of the last batch that we took in, that haven't even had a chance to finish the program, the last batch of about 100, 12 of them had already been hired already within their first 12 weeks. I view that as some pretty good success. After 16 weeks, it's so much easier because we've had our students to get all the certifications they need, which makes them get an interview easier. And then they've had a chance to do all of our interview preparation work and our study and everything else. So it's approximately 16 weeks on the average student. Perfect pistol grips flags. The admin people and I will look at it and we'll give you an answer after the fact. And Jay and Austin, if you want to discuss your case much further, for example, things specific to you, I've listed our office phone number, and one of us, somebody will get me, and at some point I will call you immediately because I try and speak to the people that desire to be part of this program. Make sure they're a good fit, so we kind of know that we can try and do everything we can to make them successful. Some people sign up on their own, but I try and speak and answer questions to anybody that has them. And honestly, anyone is free to call and at our office and ask questions. We do anything we can, and I'd love to speak with you, Jay and Austin. Asif, what to say if he asked about previous architect experience? I don't know what CAA means. So one thing that I advise my architect students is to never use acronyms or abbreviations because any of them can mean anything to a lot of people. There's at least 15 different explanations for every single thing. So when you're writing as an architect and executive, define a term, and if you're going to use an acronym or something, put it in parentheses after you've defined it. I don't know what CAA is, unfortunately. I can guide you on what to say to hiring managers if I know a little bit about your background and experience, like the current jobs you've had on and off of tech, if you've been in tech, and if so, what you've done. But without any of that, so if you want to give me some of those pieces of information, I can definitely help you. Well, I'm waiting for Asif to ask his questions, and I'm thrilled to answer them. I just need to know, what his current experience is, if he's worked in tech, if so, how many years, what he likes, what he doesn't like, what his goal job is, what certifications he has, and so I'm not really sure what CAA is. It's not a certification I've ever heard of. While we're waiting for that, does anybody have any questions for me? Any questions for me? Alex Richardson, you are new to cloud. Great. Should you know Linux, and do you need a Linux cert before doing the cloud? Well, first and foremost, Alex, what is your goal career? Because that will determine what you need to know. What would you like to do on the cloud, Alex? I'm not sure if there's a Cloud Architect Associate. Asif, I'm going to go check and see if somebody has a certification like that. Asif, okay, I'm going to confirm this with you because there is no certification Cloud Architect Associate. Are you referring to the AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate? Or some other certification? Because I'm not sure. There's a Google Professional Cloud Architect, but I don't know of any actual Cloud Architect certifications. We teach Cloud Architecture, which is very different than Solution Architecture. We also teach people how to become Solution Architects. But I'm not sure if you're referring to an AWS. Okay, good. Infrastructure Engineering, Asif. What does that mean? Were you doing networking? Were you doing Linux? Were you doing storage? Were you designing these systems? Were you configuring these systems? Okay, then Alex will be able to answer your question very well. And we have a Slack channel, Prince, that our students use, absolutely. Actually, our students communicate to each other in a couple ways, Prince. First, we have live Zoom calls multiple times per week where people actually speak to each other. And then we also use Slack for our students, and they ask us questions every day, and we answer them every day. And that way our students can communicate with each other and us. Generally speaking, pistol whip vlogs, solution architects configure nothing, which means they won't be implementing storage volumes or EC2 instances. They design systems. So, not configuring. Should you know how to configure these things? Sure, but it's a position where you're speaking and writing and documenting and designing. Let me go through while I'm waiting for some of these questions to be answered, and I see some, and I will address all of them. So Alex, I still need to know, Alex, did you respond to your, okay. You're really not sure you really want to know where you want to go. Okay, so let me give you some guidance, Alex. If your desire is to be a cloud engineer, you're going to need to know how to program, especially doing some scripting. You are going to need to know Linux. You're also going to need to understand some of the networking. And you're going to have deep, 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 deep technical knowledge. Now, if you wanted to be an architect, you need to understand how systems work, how to design them, how to communicate them. So, knowledge of Linux is important, but the level of Linux knowledge is different. For example, if you're an architect, I have my students do about 10 labs, and the 10 labs force them to use Linux, and that's enough. More than they're ever going to need to know. More than they're ever going to need to know for Linux knowledge. But, what my students need to know is, because they're architects, what is the network? How does it work? How do you design it? What is a firewall? What does it work? How do you use it? What is storage? How is the storage architected, and how do you design the right storage for the right solution? And it's far more than just picking S3 or EBS. What kind of computational performance do we need? Number of CPU cores, DRAM. What type of storage environment do we need in terms of disk performance? Can we get away with a PIOPS volume, or do we need to do something more to get more data center like information? For example, do we need to convince people to basically do RAID 10 because the speed and performance of cloud storage is so bad? So do we need to do that to get to something more acceptable? All of these things actually go into what it takes to actually be a designer. So Alex, if you want to be a designer, it's more about how the things work. If you want to be an engineer, it's more about how to do stuff. So I am more than happy to do that. And if you want some guidance in your career, or if you're interested in how to do something in the fastest way, feel free to call our office, and we can guide you in the most appropriate way to get you to your career goal. Next, I see some questions going through. Generational. Where does a new solutions architect usually start in a company? It depends on so many things where you would start in the company. Generational entrepreneur, the biggest determination of where you're going to start is your communication skills, believe it or not. If you have really good communication skills and strong executive presence, you're going to start at a much higher position. You'll be able to be closer to that cloud architect and less solution architect role, which will pay you a lot more and have much more career potential. If your communication skills are weak, you're basically speaking, your first place is going to be a cloud engineer if you're lucky. So typically speaking, it's there. It also depends upon the kind of company. You can join an entrepreneurial company where basically they take people, they value people, they like their contributions, and you can do really well and rise very quickly. Or you can join one of these big giant companies, and basically everybody's a cog on a wheel, and everybody does the same thing day in and day out, and nobody notices how well they actually do, and that's a possibility too. So you got to figure out which kind of company, and I've got some videos on my channel on how to do that. And basically the smaller companies, you can start in much bigger positions. The bigger companies will basically be level. So that's kind of what's going to do that. But your communication skills are the biggest thing. Friends, do we have recommendations on materials to help people pass exams? In our training for our students, we provide complete and total free training for the Certified Solution Architect Professional, AWS Advanced Networking, and AWS Advanced Security. These are the minimum level of at least the certified solution architect professional is the minimum level necessary to get hired in today's world. Didn't used to be that way, but we provide that free. We also have a book that we provide free to our students on passing the certified solution architect professional. When it comes to practice exams, Review and Prep actually makes some very good practice exams. We highly recommend them. Their CEO, Haman Sharma, is a really good person. I know him very well. We don't get anything from sending people out to Review and Prep for practice exams, but I've seen their exams and I like them and I like their CEO. In the YouTube community page, our students get 15% off because I said I like your test and could you do something for my community? You'll probably get a lot of business. So there's a coupon for 15% off. I get nothing out of it, so I don't want you to think we do. I would never take money from other people for referrals. I feel bad about it. It's just an issue if we have it, and that's what I recommend for those things along the way. Miss him. Hi Mike, good day. You're obtaining your certificate in 2009. Is it possible to get a job with 2 years less of experience? Absolutely, miss him. I have people that get jobs in cloud computing with 0 experience in tech ever. Ever. Totally, totally, totally easy to do. But, Miss M. Valerie, the key is this. The cloud architect is not just a certification. That certification, to say the certified solution architect professional, is not enough to get hired on its own unless you have lots of background. None of the certifications alone are enough. It's 10% of the process. The reason we started this company is I've been helping people get their first tech jobs forever. And there were so many people that had all these AWS certifications, but they didn't have the cloud architect skills to get hired. Why is this? The certifications basically teach you the name of the service and how to configure it. Problem is, no solutions architect or cloud architect is probably going to ever do that in their entire career. They're going to have to meet with a client. They're going to have to ask a client that's unaware of anything about the cloud, everything about their business cloud systems and how it works, and they may not even understand. Then they're going to have to design a solution. Then they're going to have to sell the solution. Then they're going to present the solution. Then they're going to have to lead a team to build it. So these are all leadership skills. So the stuff that's part of the certified solution architect, associate, and professional, not going to cut it for getting your first job. So if you're with us, you'll have all the training. You can also go to my page. If you are not with us, Miss and Valerie, you can buy a course from Daniel Goldman. They're a few $1,000s on emotional intelligence, but they're excellent. Speak Easy or Jerry Weissman's Presenting to Win. They have a couple of presentation courses. They're a few $1,000s, but that'll teach you what you need to know. You will need to know some Cisco networking. To do that, you're just going to have to need to know that. You need some executive presence training, either get an executive coach. All this is included in our program for basically 1 day's pay as a cloud architect, because we're running sort of a cross between a charitable mission and a business. But if you're not with us, and you don't have to be, these are the skills you need to do. By the way, our complete syllabus is posted, so I've given you the places to do it. It's probably 1/10 of the cost to do it with us, but you can do these things on your own, and they're what's really necessary to get your first cloud architect job. I basically spent about $250,000 on training these kind of things over the course of my career to be really good at it, and that's why I've been on 5 interviews in my life and I've gotten 5 job offers in my life because I studied what the hiring managers desire. So that's part of it as well. Miss them. Also, I recommend you take our free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. The reason I recommend this is we will tell you what's missing and the steps to take to actually get started. To study to get there. We're actually doing it tomorrow. It's completely free. And I am happy to answer any more questions you actually have right now or tomorrow. But I'm just popping that link in there to if anybody desires. And Miss and Valley recruiters, they ask for a certain number of experience, but it's never a problem. Here's what happens as hiring managers. Here's why we're looking for experience. And here's why we don't use HR. And here's why we try to avoid HR on the way in. Employers do not care about your experience. They care about your competency. What ultimately happens is it's very hard to find competent people. So hard to find competent people that employers will literally pay a tech recruiter $20,000 to $50,000 just to give them somebody they can potentially hire, that they can hire. It's that hard. There are hundreds of thousands of cloud computing jobs that are open and available right now, and organizations can't find somebody to do them quickly. I've interviewed 1,000+ people recently in the last 3 months, and of the 1,000 people, there was not a single one straight. Well, there was one. There was not a single. Other than that, there was not a single one off the back that could actually do the job. And this person had a double CCIE. So put it in context. It's a big job. It requires a lot of knowledge and how things work and how to design them. This has not certification. This is a big job. So you can learn what's necessary in my free webinar tomorrow. You could become one of my students if you desire, or you can follow our syllabus and just buy individual training components from elsewhere. That's really what it's going to take to get your first tech job. Don't worry so much about the experience. Worry about being perfect when you finally get an interview. Which naturally puts us into the same position as what is a cloud architect? And the reason we say this is what ultimately has been going on in the industry is whenever a technology is new, and I don't consider the cloud new. To me, the first cloud I worked with was in 1998, which was frame relay, and then I worked with ATM and VPLS, and then I've been designing, basically, my team at Cisco, we were looking at how you design the cloud, and all of us that have designed networks and data centers or clouds have done it forever. Private clouds, public clouds, we've all designed these as well. I can say I've designed this stuff in the last couple of decades. It's nothing new. But when people don't know what actually is the cloud, they don't know where DevOps begins and SysOps ends because they literally have no idea. So what is it that recruiters are doing? I can tell you exactly. And how job descriptions are coming along. They're people like me. And Mooj, I'll get back to you. I'll answer your question next. I just see that it's there. So when you're reading these job descriptions, here's how people like me make a job description. We go to a website because we're not job description writers, and we type cloud architect, and we say, oh, this thing looks like it's 1,000 words. It must be good. So we take this job description, we put it into Word or Google Docs, whichever you use. Then we add our own stuff, then we save it, then we post it. The next person who doesn't know what a cloud architect is or is bad at writing job descriptions like me does the same thing. Goes and takes my post, which was somebody else's post for which I added my stuff, then adds their stuff and saves it. And by the time you're done, literally speaking, you don't even know what job they're looking for because they're asking for 5 careers. So what I'm going to do is as follows. This problem became so pervasive that Gartner, an organization that basically evaluates all technology and tech careers and what they do, started interviewing chief information officers. And chief information officers are the people that run the organization's tech. So here's the way it looks. You got the CEO that sets the strategy, the CIO that basically says, hey, Mr. CEO, I'm going to use the information technology systems to execute on your strategy, who reports to the VP of IT, the director of IT, and then the first line hiring manager. So if you want to know what a cloud architect does, then this is what you should do. And what did they do? Gartner pulled CIOs everywhere. And then they published it in CIO magazine. So here's what Gartner said, and I even listed the link to it. A cloud architect leads the cultural change for cloud adoption, develops and coordinates a cloud architecture, developing a cloud strategy and coordinating adoption, that means design, helping to find talent with the necessary skills, assessing application software and hardware, establishing a cloud broker team, establishing best practices across the company for use of the cloud, helping find cloud providers, overseeing and governance and mitigating risk, working with the IT security to monitor policy and develop incident response procedures, manage budgets and estimate cost and operating scale. This is what an architect does. I've been an architect for decades now. That's what architects do. We don't script. We don't configure. We don't do API work. I've been an architect for almost 25 years now, and I've never written a script or code in my life. I wouldn't know how to. Why? Because I'm an architect. If you train for things to be an architect and you have a focused architect resume, you're going to get an architect job. If you train for scripting and DevOps and SysOps, you're not going to get an architect job because your resume is not going to look focused. You can only learn so many things, and if you want to be an architect, you've got to be real good at architecture. You want to be SysOps? Great. Focus on SysOps, but you won't be an architect, but you'll be great at it. You want to do DevOps? Wonderful. DevOps is terrific. Become great at DevOps, but realize they're separate careers. Okay, Mooj, you had a question, and how would you design a 3-tier web architecture? So the first thing that I would do is the first thing I would do is ask the client what are their business goals. What are they trying to use the website for? Where are their customers? What are the number of hits that they think they're going to be getting on the website? What do the traffic flows look like, and where are your users coming from? Do the users need to see something in a special language of their choice? Do the users need to be routed to a certain type of website based upon, for example, the device you're using? So first you need to know all the inputs. Then, after you know these inputs, only then are you in the position to start designing. And then you have to say, for example, what are your security requirements? What are your performance requirements? What are your latency requirements? And what are your availability requirements? Once you know this, now you're in the position to start looking at things. For example, if you need 5 nines availability, you're going to need to use multi-region and multi-availability zone per region. If you need 4 nines, you can just do 2 availability zones. So just that is even the beginning. Then you need to know exactly the performance of these servers. You know, do they need to be 128 cores with 4 terabytes of RAM? Or are they 4 core servers with that? You don't know because you don't know the traffic. So you need to find your computing platform. So typically speaking, when you know your computing platform and you know your computing performance, then you're in a better place to start designing things. For example, if you have huge performance requirements, typically what you'll do is you'll put a content delivery network, for example, like Akamai or like AWS CloudFront, prior to a load balancer. And if it's a high performance website, it's going to be using a network load balancer. And if it's a low performance website, because you don't have that much traffic, you're going to use an application load balancer. Then you might need an additional network or application load balancer based upon the system's performance. And then after that, you're going to need then you're going to have your application servers or your virtual machines. Those virtual machines are going to be sized in CPU, memory, and disk performance based upon the needs that you know. So you need to know all those things from the questions that you asked. Now, after that, for example, then what you need to evaluate is what kind of a database do I need? Do we need to establish the relationship between variables? If so, we need a relational database. If we're using a relational database, how many hits do we get? If we're expecting a lot of hits, we're going to need read replicas to make it scale. If we're expecting it to scale even more, we might need a caching system to reduce the load on the read replicas. We might need a queuing system if we've got a lot of messages coming in. So all of these are necessary to determine what they're at. Then the next part of the question moves is what kind of security do they need? Is WAF and Shield going to be sufficient, plus network ACLs and security groups? If it is, great. If it's not, we're going to have maybe Shield at the outside, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll get an enterprise firewall from the marketplace. Then maybe we'll get an enterprise IDS IPS system from the marketplace to kind of lock it down. Then we'll use network ACL security groups. We may add host-based firewalls plus malware protection to all the servers. That kind of thing. Or we could have found out, for example, that we needed extreme scalability and then had to use, for example, an OSQL database such as Apache Cassandra, Keyspaces, DynamoDB, or one of the other ones. So I hope I was able to give you enough of an answer to the question, but to understand how to design these things, especially on an interview, you need to know those factors first, Moosh. If you've got any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Alonzo, thank you for coming in while you're on vacation. So Alonzo is one of my students, and Alonzo is an incredible, capable individual, and he's one of those folks that can get through in a very short period of time because he's working hard and he's on his vacation and he's still paying attention. So Alonzo, welcome. Congratulations for the effort. Really appreciate it. So moves the question again regarding storage, that's going to be based upon the business requirements. Are all the web servers basically serving off of the same thing? Then you might use a network file system share, which could also be EFS. Is it that they're all doing? Is it that you've got static content or dynamic content? Static content could be served from S3. Dynamic content needs to be served from the servers. So regarding the storage, it's all dependent upon the performance that you need. Can you get the performance that you need from EFS? If you can't, does stuff need to be stored local to these systems, and can it be stored in a standard EBS volume or a PIOPS volume? As it's still too slow, where you need a RAID array of PIOPS volume. So again, all this stuff moves is based upon asking the requirements, which is why these soft skills are so important. If you don't have the requirements, you'll never know how to design any of these things, because you won't be able to. So I hope I answered your question there, Moj. So I'm waiting to hear back. I see Kwasi. What would be the level of confidence of an employer hiring a cloud architect without any experience? Here's the thing. We interview people. We ask technical questions. We will know in about a second if you're capable or not. If you are capable and have no experience, it doesn't matter. Here's what happened on my first tech job. I can tell you instantly. Initially what happened was I had applied for 5 jobs and had gotten 5 rejections 25 years ago. Now, this is me, personally, which is why I developed this system 25 years ago, which I've been using now for decades to help my clients. What happened is I applied for 5 jobs and got 5 rejections. So I started calling recruiters. And recruiters told me exactly what the hiring managers desired. In fact, I called 50 recruiters. I was like a mad scientist. I was calling recruiter. I built a list of things that employers wanted. I then said, okay, this is what employers want. This is where I'm at today. And I built a plan for a gap analysis. And here's what happened when I went on my first job interview. I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was a really great experience. There was a person, his name was Devendra, and he interviews me. And he asked me a question, and I answer it. He asked me another question, and I answer it. He asked me a third question, and I said, Devendra, I said, I need to be open and honest with you. I said, today's Monday, it's 11:30. I said, last Friday at 6:30, I was still doing rounds with my patients in the hospital because, I practice internal medicine. I said, but I love tech. I'm highly motivated. I'm highly energetic. I'm highly enthusiastic about tech. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and I learn quickly. And if this was something important on your team, I would learn it immediately. But I don't know that now because I've been practicing medicine, and I just wanted to be honest with you. Well, Devendra starts laughing hysterically. And Devendra says, wait a second. You know this much, and you've not worked before? And I said, well, yes. And he said, I have to hire you. Thank you. And he said, but you applied to be a network engineer, but I'm going to make you a senior network engineer. I said, what? And he said, here's why. He said, you're this good without experience. You're already more capable than 2/3 of my staff. What's going to happen when you actually have experience? So that's what happened. Within 6 months, I was the lead architect for the team. So the hiring manager, not HR, the hiring manager will be able to determine if you have the technical capabilities based upon your interview. On average, it takes 5,000 applications to hire someone, and it takes a tremendous number of interviews. So if you are technically competent, you will not have a problem. It is that hard to find someone technically competent. It is really, really hard. New, experience, inexperience, if we find competency, that's all we care about. It's that hard. Now, if you're applying through HR are not technology professionals. Because HR are not technology professionals, they have zero idea in terms of being able to gauge your technical competency. And because of that, they ask for experience. So we try and bypass HR by using recruiters in the first place. And when you actually do get an interview, that's the key for you to prove that you're competent. Lots of people can get their first solution architect interviews, which means their experience doesn't matter. The problem is they're not getting hired. Why are they not getting hired? They have the wrong communication skills, the wrong attitude, the wrong interview tactics, or the lack of competency. That's what happens every single time. Otherwise, they wouldn't bring you in. As hiring managers, we are way, way, way too busy to be interviewing people that we don't think can do the job. We bring people in if we think there's a possibility they can do the job, and then if they're good, we hire them. And you know what? If you're really on a good interview, they will hire you on the spot. Of the 5 jobs, and I've worked for some really great companies. I worked as the principal 2 architect, the lead architect for Comcast Backbone. That was 1 interview. Cisco was 2 days to get hired. Again, they would normally interview for months at a time, but it was a good interview. MCI WorldCom, which was the largest internet service provider in the world then, I was hired within 15 minutes of my interview. Same thing happened when I worked on Wall Street. I was interviewed. I was told that he'd making me an offer before I even left the interview. So do a good interview and you'll be fine. I will tell you from experience, if someone's been on more than 3 interviews for a position, not with the same company, more than 3 interviews, and they're not getting hired, there's a problem. The problem is technical competency, communication skills, attitude, or interviewing. No one should ever have to go on more than 3 interviews to get hired for a job. If so, fix one of the other problems we're talking about and you won't have a problem in your next interview. So, who else has a question? Perfect, and glad I was able to answer your question. So go for your dreams and win. And never give up until you get there. Who else has a question for me? Wonderful, it's great to hear. That mental toughness or grit, where you just fight till you get to your dreams, Kwasi, that's the mind of a champion. I will tell you, personally for me, when I did my CCIE in a matter of 6 months, it was about 75,000 pages of reading and about $50,000 just to run routers and switches in those days. And there were a whole lot of days that were pretty bad, dark days trying to read through this stuff because I had a full-time job at the time. But when I did that and I conquered that Cisco Certified Internet Expert, amazing things happened in my career. Like literally it was amazing, and it was overnight. And I was able to retire at a very young age, which I was enjoying my retirement until I decided that it was going to be a really great experience to kind of help people build new careers. So that's kind of where my world has come from. I just love doing this. Who has the next question? Any more questions? The team has informed me to place a link to our training, so I'll do so, along with a coupon. Hi, Noel. Good morning. So happy to have you here. And here's a link to our office number. So happy to hear that, Noel. Excited to hear you're doing some training because we want you to have this perfect cloud architect job. Any more questions for me? Any more questions? Diraj, that's a really great question. How do you get real experience? So it's really tough. I mean, I have a program based upon teaching people architecture, and it's based upon my 25 years experience in how to be in architecture. There are architecture training programs such as TOGAF, which generally teach architecture, but they don't typically teach cloud architecture, but those principles still really apply. Cisco had a pretty incredible architecture program called the Cisco Certified Design Expert, which was another good architecture process. I teach it in our program. I don't know of any other training program that's actually teaching architecture. That's the problem, and that's why I actually created mine. I know a lot of organizations that are teaching implementation engineering, but actually not architecture. And I started to think why. What's going on with this? And then I actually checked the LinkedIn profiles of all the people that are making these e-courses, and none of them have ever been an architect before. And that's why I learned why they couldn't actually teach architecture. So if you wanted to learn architecture, the cheapest way to do it is through our program, because we're a cross between a charitable mission and a business, and that's why we make our training inexpensive, even though we could charge 10 times more. So that would be one way to do it. If you're not with us, I would recommend finding a reputable training company like a Global Knowledge and start going down the TOGAF path. I would say that's the next best thing. Architecture training is just so much different than engineering training. So we've got a program, but you could find something from a Global Knowledge that would help you with the TOGAF. And then what you'd have to do is get some good cloud knowledge after that, meaning the network and the data center. So you could do a Global Knowledge kind of training program if you're not with us. And then you could buy a 16-core server with 128 gigs of RAM. And then for experience to understand these things, so you can show employers what matters, that you actually have experience, which is what we do with our students. Then what you would do, because you need to show some kind of competency and experience, is you would show that you've set up, for example, a firewall, a VPN concentrator, you've set up server virtualization, you've set up containers, you've set up Microsoft Active Directory because the entire world uses that for IAM. Then, for example, you should set up the Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP stack. All my students do it. Then build a VPN concentrator, then build a firewall, and then build your own cloud. All my students build their own clouds because how do you know what a cloud is or design a cloud if you don't know what the cloud is? So if you train with us, all that's included. If you're not with us, find a company, reliable company, to basically get some training. You're not going to get this from a $50 Udemy course. TOGAF architecture training is going to be $5,000, $10,000, but that's the only kind of way to do it unless you're with us to get that kind of really good thing, and then buy a server and then do the kind of labs we're talking about. All that's included in our program for 1/10 of the cost. Having said that, you can train with us or you can train externally. They're basically how you would learn architecture prior to starting a cloud architect job. So Kwasi, our program is approximately 16 weeks. I say approximately because we do 2 live sessions per week, and then during the week our students actually do videos in between sessions and then do projects for which we grade everything to make sure that they're doing well. So 16 weeks on average. Sometimes we get people that have never worked in tech a day in their life. And sometimes we keep them for 20 weeks or 24 weeks in the program because it's going to take them a little longer. We don't care. And sometimes we have people, like I've got a lot of them, that are so motivated and they're not working that they can just do the stuff in the program for literally 10 hours a day and can literally finish the program in 8 weeks or so. So 16 weeks is pretty typical. And that's the basis of how we designed our program. Because that's how long it's been, in my experience, to get people to do a really good job if they train if they take my 2 classes, in-person classes per week, and then they do about 10 hours of homework/labs per week. And by labs, we're not referring to setting up an EC2 instance. I use an 8-year-old little girl to do it because she's really cute. She clicks the buttons and she says, EC2, and she makes me smile. I mean building your own cloud. I mean building your own data center inside of our data center. That's what we're talking about real experience. Things that employers will care about. Things that you put in our research and development section to show that you know all about cloud migrations because you know about the network and the data center. What other questions exist for me? Any more questions? I should ask, if you're enjoying this content, please leave a like. Thank you, Noel. I remember when we first spoke and how much you've actually learned in such a short period of time. So thank you for your comment, Noel. I'm literally, I've seen how many things you've done, how fast, and it's really great. And I've been reading your homework assignments, and each one makes me happy and proud. Who else has questions for me? Any more questions? If there's no questions, I'll end this call. If there's still more questions, I'm happy to keep it open a little longer. As long as we help you all get to your goals. That's the whole point of these calls. Sure, Missum, let me answer your question. Oh, you left a question. Derek, thank you for the things you do each day to inspire me as my student as well. Missum, so I'm not completely sure I understand the question. So, and the reason I'm trying to not sure that I completely understand your. This is about migration. Which questions do you need to ask us as a solution architect, and when do you get on the migration project has already begun? So realistically speaking, there's about 100 questions that our students actually ask prior to migrating anything. Literally, at least 100 of them, and that's only a start. There could be thousands of questions you actually would ask as part of the migration process. And I'll give you an example of a few, but the remaining part of that list we actually keep for our students because it's a bit proprietary to the work that we do. But I will definitely give you some. So there you go, John. So, generally speaking, prior to any migration, we'd ask, and I'll give the high level things without the deep questions. We would ask, what are the business goals? What are the business challenges? Legal and regulatory restraints? We would ask financial goals. We would ask what the organization looks like. We would ask the current state of the business, the future state of the business, what the competitors are doing. We would ask about the number of employees, partner organizations, their technology requirements, for example. Would be something that would be incredibly concerned about. And then we would ask availability, we would ask security requirements, then we would look into the compute requirements prior to doing anything like this. Then after that we would look into security requirements and application requirements and how the users would be accessing, where they'd be coming from in disaster recovery. So there are the high level questions we would ask, and then inside of those categories we probably have 10 to 15 more questions missing. So it's not something I can definitely put in here, but definitely I gave you the start and realized there could be 10 to 15 questions inside of each of those questions and more to try and do that. So Jay and Austin, can I explain the main difference between the career program and the experience program? Yes. The Cloud Architect Career Development Program is what it takes to basically go from wherever you're at to getting your first Cloud Architect job. It's really the only program we have. I will explain to you what the Cloud Architect Experience Program is, and it is purely as follows. I have been telling people for a very long time that in order to get your experience, what you need to do is you need to learn the network and the data center. And I produced a lot of free videos on the kind of labs you can do at home to get your experience for free. And then what happened is, I told people in order to do this for free, you need a 16-core server with 120 gigs of RAM. And when I made these videos about 6 months ago, you could buy a 16-core U server with 128 gigs of RAM for about $800. So I felt good about it because I figured the students could buy the server, do their labs, and then sell them. Great. For almost as much as they bought it, it was going to be cheap. But something happened. I started getting a lot of calls from some really wonderful students in India and Africa, and they said, I can't buy a server for $800 here, like you're describing. And even if I couldn't sell it when I was done. And I went, okay, there's a problem with my theory of helping people get their free training at home. And then what happened was I started to sense there was going to be a shortage of computer components. I started to feel some scarcity. So what I did is I bought a bunch of servers and stuck them in my data center. So the Cloud Architect Experience Program is basically a place for people to get server access for a third of the cost it would take for them to buy their own servers. And because of that, I threw in a bunch of tech training for free just to make sure that people had some benefit out of it. Having said that, it's the Cloud Architect Career Development Program that is the process necessary to completely get hired, not just do some practice labs on your own. So that's really the one I recommend. The Experience Program is only for lab access. The Experience Program is great if somebody was a sales rep working for the last 10 years. And they've been a successful sales rep and they want to move in here and they've got the kind of executive presence, communication skills. All they need is to fill in the gap for the tech. But for not normal people, it's the Cloud Architect Career Development Program. Jan Austin, did I answer your question? Plus, the Cloud Architect Career Development Program has live training where the other one does not. The Cloud Architect Career Development Program is a place where you can ask questions throughout the week. The Cloud Architect Career Development Program focuses on the business and all those other things. So we cover everything versus the other one's just pure tech. Who else has a question? Who else has a question? Any more questions for me? Give you guys one more minute to ask a question. If there's questions, I'll stay around. Otherwise, okay, we'll hold on for you, John. While we're waiting for John, let's, Ms. VM, thank you so much. I'm honored and privileged to be able to work with this community as often as I can, so thank you. Appreciate you all very much as well. Pistol Grips Vlogs, I will look. So Pistol Grips Vlog, we put a book in the course with the intention for people to read it because we knew it would help them both in their architecture career as well as passing the exam. So yes, we would like the people to read the book that's in the course. The more knowledge we can provide people and the more channels of information, the way we learn things differently, we intake differently information from reading versus watching videos versus listening. So the more ways we can do it, Pistol Grips Vlogs to build you a better experience, definitely we want you to do it. John Richards, how deep of an understanding do we need in networking as an architect? Oh, that is a great question. And is it covered in our program? So the answer is yes, we get very deep in networking in our program. We have no choice but to do so. Without a solid knowledge of networking, it will be completely impossible to be a capable, competent cloud architect. Here's the reason. Cloud is a virtualized network and a data center. Nothing works without the network. Zero. So if you don't understand the network, you're definitely not going to be positioned to basically do anything, let alone design it. The network is so fundamental that the people that I know that have the best cloud architect roles, meaning the distinguished roles, the principal roles, those kind of things that are so important, I know for the most of the people that I know that have them, that never had a certification in their life other than a Cisco certified internet expert. And they're being hired as senior and distinguished and principal cloud architects. Why? Because the network is so fundamental to the role. So, and Shivan, can't wait to see the rest of your question. So why is it super important? It's super important because the network is the foundation of everything. What do you need to know about networking? First, you need to know IP addressing. Then you need to know subnetting, all basic things. Then you need to know DNS. You need to understand how firewalls work. You need to understand how routers work. You need to understand how switches work. You need to know VLANs because they're used. You need to understand 802.1q tagging. You need to understand Q and Q tagging. You need to understand IGPs and how they work, like OSPF. You need to understand IBGP and EBGP. You need to understand route filtering and traffic engineering tuning with BGP. Things like changing the weight, the local preference, the MED, pending AS paths, that kind of thing. You need to understand how to use BGP communities. You need to know business reasons to use NAT, not just connecting to the internet. These are all critical cloud architect things. You need to understand IPsec and tunneling. You need to understand, private lines versus VPN connections and how and when to use them. You need to understand transitive and non-transitive routing and when and where and how you manipulate things. These are just some of the things that are necessary for networking. And we teach all of this to our students because it would be impossible to be a good, competent architect without that. So I hope I answered your question there, John Richards. And it might be in Pistol Grips Vlogs, if I misinterpreted your question, let me know. Somebody from my team said she could have been asking the question, is reading the book a prerequisite to doing something else on the stage? No, we just want you to read the book along the way. So if I misinterpreted your question, I am not sure, but we definitely want you to read that book. Hi, Shivam. Welcome. Who has the next question? Any more questions for me? And John, since you asked about the things that were inside of our program and or the training that was there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to okay, and while I'm doing that, Shivam, there are plenty of places for junior architects. Plenty of opportunities for junior architects in every way, shape, or form. But these junior architecture roles require more than just technical competency. It goes back to what I was trying to say is that certification will not equate to a junior architect role. Certification basically means you know the name of the service and how to configure them. To get a junior solutions architect role, you need to take a step back. You need to basically build a portfolio that includes architecture work, which means systems design. It also means, getting the right certifications if and when appropriate. It also means looking at your resume and looking at your background. So developing soft skills, emotional intelligence, communication skills, presentation skills, architecture writing skills, business acumen, ROI modeling, and the such. And if you want to let me know a little bit about your background, what you've been doing work-wise, the current certifications you have, and exactly the job you want, I can definitely guide you on how to get there. Pistol Grips Vlogs, well, I want to make sure I understand so on Mondays and Thursdays we do free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinars. On Tuesdays we typically do a free Cloud Architect Career Challenge. On Wednesdays when we can, and we have one scheduled for next Wednesday, we do the career question and answer session like we do right now. And our student training Pistol Grips Vlogs are on Monday and Friday. As you know, they're posted in Slack, and we all get notified for them. So hope I answered your question there. Generational entrepreneur, yes, I know. I didn't ever intend to come out of retirement to basically create these training programs. I did it because I had bought the 3 most common for a person that basically wanted to know what was good, his best career path, and I was retired, so I bought him the 3 best-selling courses. 2 were on Udemy and 1 was not. And when I saw what was in the courses, I was so horrified. I realized that no one would ever get hired that I decided to come out of retirement and do these things. Why? Because the network is the most critical component of the cloud. And all the other people that are even making advanced networking courses don't even know networking. Look on their resume. They've never worked in networking in their lives. So I felt it was super important to actually do this, so that's why I did it. So networking matters, plus architecture matters. It's not just good enough to know the name of a service. You basically need to understand storage, and you need to understand virtual machines, and you need to understand containers. You need to understand that if you have an AMD EPYC server with 120 cores and 4 terabytes of RAM that's operating at 80%, you want to migrate that to the cloud. What's it going to look like on the cloud? Can you get an instance that big? And if you can, what's the impact computationally of the hypervisors and things? Is that instance still going to be big enough, or you need more of them? These are all those kind of things. So you really have to take a step back. You've got to remove the cloud from every design that you're doing. You have to look at the business and the compute. Then you design an architecture around the technologies that'll make it work. And then you just select the cloud provider. So that's the easy part of determining the AWS, the Oracle, the Azure, the GCP cloud, your own private cloud, a Nutanix cloud, like an OpenStack Ansible cloud. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. So it's just a matter of understanding how those things work. So thank you for noticing we focus so much on the infrastructure, because the cloud is just a virtualized infrastructure. And we're very happy to have you here, Generational Entrepreneur. Thank you. Who else has a question for me? Any more questions for us? Ben T, the course starts immediately. So what happens is anybody that were to sign up today, what would happen is instantly they would start getting access to the course training. And then on Friday this week, what would happen is they'd be in their first live class and they'd do a student orientation towards the end of the meeting. So right now, but we do it in a rolling admission basis, and we do it for certain reasons. We have lots of lab partners, and we like to mix our junior and our senior people when they do labs together for the following reasons. We train it the way you would train a martial arts school, or the way you would train physicians in medicine. The reason we do this is let's say, Ben, you're new and you come into our program tomorrow, we'll have you work with someone that's a little more senior throughout the program, basically, to do your labs. And then, when they're working, 4 weeks from now or 8 weeks from now, you'll be senior and you'll be working with one of the more junior people. And why do we do this? We do it for the following reasons. One of the biggest pain points and challenges for the architect is the communication skills and the interview. So by mixing someone that's fairly experienced with someone that's less experienced, the more experienced person gets the following benefits. They have to learn and train how to communicate complicated things in a simple manner. Why is this so important? Because, and why is this super important? Because as a cloud architect, and then Nelson, I'll answer you in a second. We definitely, and we definitely need to answer that question for you. So by being more experienced, when you explain things to people that are less experienced, you get really good at training, speaking to people the way you would at executives. Plus, in the process of working with someone else, it reinforces things in your head. So all students, form partnerships. My students are like a giant family. They work with each other across the world. I've got students in pretty much every country you can think of, and they create an environment where they work together and they learn. In this process, let me tell you, people have long-term friendships, but it's better than that. Because of, say, the 150 students that are in my program at this point, when one graduates, they can pull you with them. And when you graduate, you can bring other people. So I've created a network that basically has 100 recruiters in it, 150 students that are either working in the cloud or going to be working in the cloud in the next few weeks. And you can all boost each other's careers. So I built it as a career development program to get you hired, but also help you, teach you the skills not only to get hired, but also accelerate your career and build you a network of professionals that do so. And that's why we've invested in all these, multiple calls per week and communications and Slack channels and everything else. Ben, actually, the cloud computing is really in making the job prospects outside the US better. And the reason is, and then Nelson, I'll get to yours as well, Kwasi. It used to be, and don't get me wrong, the performance of the traditional network in the data center is better than the cloud. Because look at it this way, Amazon is just a traditional network and data center. So it's better. Because when you add the cloud things, what happens is you reduce performance because you add the overhead of the cloud. So the performance is lower on the cloud, but the agility is a lot faster. You don't spend a month waiting for a server to come for you just to configure it. You can do it in seconds, and that makes the cloud just enough. What else is so good about the cloud outside the USA? Once you get outside of the US and the UK and Japan and Germany and maybe Australia, most of the world has very limited money after you subtract those 4 main countries out of the GDP. So in those countries, it's easy for them to spend $100 million on tech to run their business. But outside the US, where there's less wealth, now anybody with a cloud can basically start a business. They can go to the business, there's literally almost nothing to buy, and they can just pay for what they use and grow on demand. So Ben, the cloud is miraculous at equalizing the world outside the US and in the US. We have so many students outside the world for those reasons. And because of that, definitely, we find cloud architect jobs to be really great outside the country. And we have many of our students outside the US getting jobs on a daily basis. So, Nelson, I'm going to answer your question. We never, ever, ever, ever recommend anyone ever take the cloud practitioner exam. We see no point in that exam whatsoever. Here's the reason we say this, Nelson. That exam will cost you 3 months. The average cloud architect earns $600 a day. So if it takes you 3 months to do that course will cost you $36,000 of lost earnings. There is zero job potential for the most part outside of that with the cloud practitioner certification. So it's costing you 3 months of time where you're not working as a cloud architect. It's a distraction from getting to your goals, and it potentially costs you upwards of $30,000 of wasted money that you could be earning if you did something better. We always start with the Certified Solution Architect Associate if someone's new, and if someone's got any degree of experience, we jump straight to the Certified Solutions Architect Professional. Our goal is to do as minimum number of certifications as possible, and the ones that produce the maximum results for our clients. So I would say don't do anything for the cloud practitioner. The only time that would ever be helpful to you is if you were a sales rep and you've got 10 years experience selling tech at, say, a Cisco, and then you wanted to go work for Amazon and sell tech for Amazon, then the cloud practitioner might help, because it would be something that's just, hey, by the way, this is the stuff we have to sell. But if you have any technical career aspirations whatsoever, there's literally no benefit to the cloud practitioner. We would say skip it, skip it, skip it, skip it, skip it. And we don't think that any certification provider should even be in the business of taking people's money, creating content for it. So that's how we feel about the cloud practitioner, Nelson. I hope I answered your question. All we care about is that our students or the people that watch our YouTube channel find their best job as fast as possible and get paid as much as possible so they can take good care of them and build a career they love. And that cloud practitioner is just an obstacle along the way. Kwasi, I hope I answered your question there, Nelson. Kwasi, okay, you need a lot of knowledge on the business side, as much as you do on the technical side. So when it comes to being a cloud architect, it is a cross between a business and a technical role. My MBA served me very well throughout my architecture career, and I used it every day. These are the kind of things that, and Nelson, I'm so happy to hear that. I'd like to save you 3 months and get you to your goal much faster. So here are the things that are the business skills you need to know. You will be constantly presenting as an architect, and you will need to know how to deliver a killer presentation. The kind of presentation that you need to deliver as a cloud architect, you need to be comfortable speaking in front of a 1,000-person audience and keeping them captivated the whole time. You will do that as an architect. The next thing that you need to be able to do is you need to know how to write like an executive to executive. You need to be able to write with executive summaries, get your content across in what it is, how it works, why you would use it, and literally 1 page or less for executive. You're also going to need to write detailed documentation that could be about how every part of the system works. You're going to have to do ROI modeling, meaning you're going to have to show basically, how long it's going to take for the organization to get a payback or a return on their investment capital. You're going to have to analyze things like their weighted average cost of capital along the way. You're going to have to calculate things like the expected value of an opportunity, meaning if an opportunity is worth $10 million, but you think there's a 60% chance of success, the expected value of the opportunity is then $6 million. Your technical solution cost must be less than $6 million for your customer to do this, because the solution itself must cost less than the value it brings to the customer, otherwise the customer wouldn't want it. So these are just a sample of some of the many things that you need to know about business to be a cloud architect, and that's why we do so much business acumen training in our program. Did I answer your question there, Kwasi? Oh, and also, Kwasi, the more senior you go, the farther away you're going to get from tech, and the more you're going to be discussing business. So look at it this way. At the bottom right, if we were to go diagonally, at the bottom we would have the cloud engineer. That's in terms of communication skills and salary. Then we'd move up to the solutions architect, which is basically going to have a lot more system design and better communication skills, but they're still going to have a fair amount of tech knowledge. Then we move up from the solutions architect to the cloud architect, huge increase in salary, much more business knowledge, big career difference, less work, much better lifestyle. Then we move from the cloud architect to the enterprise architect, where it's basically 80% business, 20% tech. So it depends on where you're out, but the business component of being an architect is critical. If you don't want to learn the business, you will be relegated to cloud engineering roles for the rest of someone's career, because an architect is a business person, an engineer is a doer, a configurer. Both careers are great, both are valuable. You got to pick the one you like. Architects earn more and they work a whole lot less hard than the engineers. Some people like being an engineer. I enjoyed being an engineer for the first couple of years of my career. And then when I switched to architecture, it was like, what a difference. I'm so happy my life got better. So I love architecture careers for that reason. I hope I answered your question. If you've got a subsequent question to that, I am more than happy to answer. Who else has questions? While we're waiting, if you guys are enjoying the content, if you could leave a like or subscribe to the channel if you're not a member, and hit the bell. Letting everyone know we are running a completely free AWS Advanced Networking Bootcamp in 2 weeks. We hope everybody can sign up. Okay, Nelson, so that is a really great question. Best companies to work for as a solution architect, and what's the best architect to become in my opinion? So, Nelson, my experience of helping people build careers is as follows. I like my people to do the following. I like my people to learn from the laws of economics and the laws of supply and demand. What I mean by that is I like my students to study the things that are the hardest, most important, and the things that no one else is willing to study. See, everybody in college learns how to program if they study tech. And because when they're studying tech, they manage to learn software engineering. Programming is just not that in demand. I mean, there's lots of people that need it, but you're never going to, for the most part, command a large income because everybody's a programmer. Now, if you're studying cloud architecture, architecture alone is a specialty, and that's great. What I like to do with my students is I'd like to get them to specialize even further. And here's what I mean by even further. I'd like them to either become a specialist in an industry or become a specialist in an area. This is where we build your career. This is where we make you stand out. This is where you get to write your ticket, where you say, I don't want a script. I don't want to do this. I don't need to because I'm good. So we typically, our favorite place is cloud security. And the reason is the cloud is much less inherently secure than the network and the data center traditionally, because it's a little bit shared. It's also, you have less control over things, and you can't put the kind of security appliances you would like. You don't have the ability to do things like QoS on the AWS network. You can't do AO 2.1x. So there's a lot less things you can do in there. Less access to security hardware and software. So on the cloud, it becomes more important to understand security better. So cloud security, awesome. The cloud gets hacked every day. Every day. Hundreds of times per day, people are getting hacked on the AWS cloud. Is it because the cloud is not secure? No. It's because what's going on is these people have taken certification training which teaches them the name of that service and how to configure it, but they don't understand any of it is that they're doing. And with that, 16% of all problems in the cloud actually occur from misconfigured AWS S3 buckets. So cloud security is a career that's going to skyrocket like this. We also like cloud data science. And our data scientists are coming up with me on a program for that. We've got a couple of data scientists in the house. The reason we're doing that is the more we collect and aggregate all this data, the more businesses are going to want to do something with it. So we said cloud data science. Cloud networking. Wow. Networking is something that literally nobody even thinks about until it doesn't work. I had a career as a network engineer and not a network architect, and I retired at 34. And it was easy to retire at 34. Why? Because here's what happened. I picked a career which was important that no one else wanted to do. And because no one else was focused on it, the laws of supply and demand come. And if there's less supply and there's more demand, their value goes up. So we love those three types of cloud architects. Generic, because architecture in itself is a specialty. Security, or infrastructure, they're our favorite, but we also like cloud DevOps things, but that's not a cloud architect. We also like vertical industry expertise. For example, you could focus on becoming a generic cloud architect and then focus and learn all about the healthcare industry or learn about the banking industry. That's another way to specialize. Me personally, I typically specialize in networking and overall architecture and healthcare. Why? Because I used to practice medicine first, and when I talk in healthcare, people listen. So, combine the best of what you want. I hope I answered your question there, and I'm happy to answer that with a further question after the fact. William Wallace, I need to know your technical competency. I will tell you that the majority of AWS certified people I've seen that have taken like a Udemy course or one of the courses from the Australian providers, when I interview them, they know exactly how to pass the exam, but none of them really know architecture. Now, if you understand architecture and system design, it can be pretty easy. if you need a baseline test to see what you're ready and what you're ready for, you can call us and we'll do a short free consult. We'll ask you 3 or 4 interview questions. We can gauge your technical depth of knowledge based upon that. We can make a recommendation, whether it's one of our things, whether it's something that's you can just buy a $50 book from that store, or whether you're good to go. We will always give you what's in your best interest, so you're more than welcome to book a free 15-minute consult with us, and we'll determine that. After these calls, I typically leave some time if you desire to call us, and I can make a recommendation. Want to get you off unemployment and hired as fast as possible, but to really answer that question, I need to be able to ask you some questions. And they need to be open-ended questions, like describe the difference between object storage and block storage, what it is, how they work, and why you would use them. Or what is the difference between a virtual machine or a container? These are just some of the many, many, many questions that we would need to ask to gauge your things. And we would ask you a technical question and see how you describe it to let you know what type of job we think you're ready for based upon that in our experience. So that's what I can recommend for you, William Wallace. Love the name. Saw the William Wallace statue. I can't remember if it was in Glasgow. I don't think it was in Glasgow. I think it was what am I looking for? The other major city in Scotland that I went to for work, but what a cool name. Cloud Learner, thank you so much. We heard everybody wanted networking, so we made an advanced networking course. Our advanced networking course is going to be very different than others. Not only is it going to be architecturally focused versus just certification focused. So not only is ours architecture focused, we're network experts. And our networking is going to teach networking on the cloud while we're doing it. The network is just that important, so it's going to be free. When I taught that course, it became pretty clear that there was a huge gap on networking knowledge, so we want to do everything we can for the community. Leopold Ninja. Hello, you're very grateful for your program, but kind of confused about the specific of your program to take, because I already did studies in Linux, Ansible, and Solutions Architect. Okay, well, here's the thing, Leopold Mill, it depends on what your career is. As an architect, you won't be using Ansible at all. You need to understand how Linux is and how it works, but you won't be configuring Linux at all. As an architect, you're going to be learning how the systems work. As an architect, 90% of what you're going to be doing is actually lift and shift. And there's reasons we don't go to, there's very few cloud native. So how do you lift and shift that? You have to understand what the current systems are. So in our world, since we've been designing the cloud for years, and Nelson, I'll get your answer later, because it's definitely possible, and I'll explain to you how. So you can't design systems that you don't understand. So the basis of cloud architecture worlds, and Leopold Ninja, I'm assuming you're asking about cloud architects, because otherwise I will tell you. You need to understand what is the network and how does the network work. Every component of the network, the routing, the switching, traffic engineering, QoS, all of you need to understand that. Lots of the network. Then, after the network, you need to understand server virtualization. Why? Because you've been taking servers or VMs from the data center to the cloud. Then you need to understand, containers and how to design them and how they work, but not how to build them, because you're an architect, not an engineer. So you need to do that. Then you need to understand how firewalls work. You need to understand how IDS systems work. You need to understand how VPN concentrators work. All this stuff is critical. Then you need to understand how storage works and the kind of storage you use for which kinds of applications. Then you need to learn how to get the requirements from the customer. Then you need to be able to learn how to present the requirements to the customer. Then you need to understand how the cloud works. So we teach our students how the cloud works, and then our students actually build the cloud. Because you can't design something you don't know. So our students don't do something like set up an EC2 instance. That's nothing. Our students build a cloud. So realistically speaking, it's identifying the kind of job you want, Leopold Ninja, and then determining the career path. Terraform, never going to be used by a cloud architect, ever. Going to be used by a cloud engineer, sometimes. Going to be used by sysops people all the time. CloudFormation, never going to be touched by a cloud architect, not relevant. Nor is coding, nor is scripting. Cloud architects will do none of this in their career. Why? Because they're systems designers and business people. Cloud engineers might do some, and sysop people are going to do a lot of it. So Leopold Ninja, if you tell us exactly what we want, we can help you get there. But here's the thing. Our program is designed to build architects. Architects are not going to be doing those things that you mentioned. because they're not architect skills, they're engineering and sys skills. So if you want to let me know exactly your career, I'm happy to guide you. Our program is 100% based on how to become a cloud architect, how to get hired as a cloud architect. It's based upon me working as an architect since 2001. So because I've spent that many years working as an architect, before that it was engineering, I know what's required to be an architect. It's what is getting my students hired. So we teach, realistically speaking, all the things that basically are architecture that are not covered in certifications. The certification piece is about 10% of the process. We cover the other 90%. So I hope I answered your question, Lupin Ninja. You can definitely come off and I'll happily answer it. Nelson asks, could you land a VP position? Well, VP positions mean a lot of things to a lot of people. If you decided to work as a cloud architect as a bank, your first job would probably be a VP position, since everybody in a bank is a VP. No. And a director in a bank is far, far, far above a VP. It's a little cuckoo. Having said all of that, here's what it takes to become a VP. It takes the following: strong leadership skills, great emotional intelligence, executive presence, business acumen. This is what it takes to be a VP. Bringing out the best in others. Being able to interact with customers and develop relationships with every executive, all their the CXO level people, the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, the CTO, all of this. These are what's necessary. So why do we train this with everyone? Because we don't expect people to just be a junior engineer or architect forever. We want them to have the skills necessary to do this with a career. So you can definitely do it, Nelson. As you move up the salary and business ranks, it's more important that it's all about soft skills, emotional intelligence, communication skills, presentation skills, and leadership skills, and all much less about the tech. So hope I answered your question there. Who else has a question? Or Leopold, or Nelson, if you've got any more questions, fine. If I didn't answer your questions completely. And that's right, William Wallace. I remember I had gone to Edinburgh for the day, and then after that, then they basically, I passed it in Stirling. That's exactly where I saw the monument. Thank you. Any more questions? Well, while we're waiting for some more questions, my people have reminded me that it's YouTube, so we should ask if you're enjoying our content to leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell, that sort of thing. You're welcome, Nelson. We've been guiding people for 2 decades, and it's just something we just enjoy. It's really wonderful when somebody calls you and says, guess what? I did what you said, and now I'm here. We love when we hear it every time. So Nelson, anything we can do. Great question, Eva Bizarre. As a rule, most cloud architects are full-time. But you could be contract, but most are full-time. The higher you get up the scheme, the more likely you are to be full-time versus contract. So, thank you, Alonso. That's basically exactly what we're trying to do. As an organization, we do teach the certification piece, but that's only 10%. And we almost wouldn't even teach it at all. And we only focus on the other 90% because the certification piece is just so minimal. The reason we focus on that certification at all is as follows. The certification signals someone to interview you. That's it. But it gets you an interview. So we use certification to help you get an interview. Hiring managers beyond that don't care if you're certified, but they definitely, um, for it's definitely what we do to get you out of there. Melvin, your question. Good afternoon. In the last live you did, I clicked on your link. In the crowd, is it strictly online set days? You're based out of Nancy and you work full time as well. So, Melvin, we actually put together a new website. I thought that we cleared it up, but I guess we did not. So thank you for the feedback. My web team is also on the call. Our program, the career development program, is as follows. We have 2 live classes per week, for which we conduct via Zoom. They're basically 3 hours each. The one is on a Monday and one is on a Friday. We do record them for people that can't make it to the classes. In between classes, we have videos on demand that our students do. We have homework assignments, written assignments, presentation assignments, or technical assignments. These technical assignments can, and it's okay, Melvin, I love answering questions. And these technical assignments could be anything from, setting up Microsoft Active Directory to building your own cloud. Because if you don't build your own cloud, you're not really going to understand how the cloud works. Our students literally build their own AWS environments from scratch in our data center. They VPN and they do it because we want our students to know everything. So 2 live sessions per week, which we record, videos on demand and homework assignments that get done during the week. During the week, we have a Slack channel, and on our Slack channel, people communicate during the week. They do lab assignments, and then we have our tech. So I want to make sure that we kind of explain that to you. So if you can't make a live session, don't worry. We record it and you can watch it after the fact. Most of our students that work part-time, they attend part of the live session and watch part of it, but they attend these live sessions so they can ask any questions they desire. So and I hope I answered that. So we also have some exceptionally good recruiters in the New York City area as well to help our students, graduates, get cloud architect jobs when they're done. So I hope I answered your question there. But yes, it's a combination of live, in-class, recorded. It's about 250 hours of the program. I would say 50 hours of it, you'll be doing things that are related to the business side of the cloud architecture world. 50 hours will be related to the AWS side, and the other 150 hours will be related to how to become a cloud architect, cloud computing things. So hope I answered your question there. So Breeze, all of our sessions are in EST, but they all typically work well for PST. The way we picked our time zones were as follows. The initial students asked us, our time zones work for the following places very easily. All of our sessions, will either be at 9 or 11 a.m. For the folks in the Pacific time zone. That's not a problem, at least weird hours. Our students in the UK all fit time-wise. Our students in Central European time all fit easily time-wise. All of our students in Africa, for which there are many, fit in perfectly time-wise. Gets a little challenging for our students in India, but many of our students in India are just so grateful to have the opportunity that they actually attend the classes live anyway. So I hope I answered your questions there. Deep Pathni, how much programming knowledge is required for careers in cloud? It depends on the career in cloud. So as a cloud architect, Deep, you will never program in your entire life. I've been an architect for over 20 years now, and I've never written a script or programmed, nor have any of the other architects that I know have ever done that. Cloud engineers, you're going to be doing some programming and some scripting. SysOps people, non-stop scripting of things. So it depends on the cloud career you actually desire. As an architect, there is zero programming. Deep, if you have a question on any specific cloud career, I can give you there. That is truly based upon, the kind of cloud role you want. If you want to let me know more about the cloud role that you desire, please let me know. But otherwise, cloud architect, no coding, not ever. Cloud engineer, a little coding. Cloud DevOps, lots of coding. Cloud SysOps, lots of coding. So I hope I answered your questions. So Deep, if you've got subsequent follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer. Melvin, you have a business management degree and currently pursuing your MBA. Good. Melvin, that's one of the things. So What I do is I basically did the following. I took a combination of probably about 50 leadership courses and an MBA, and I bring those business acumen things into the program. And so, for example, there are things that we learn in MBA programs about how to write. Unfortunately, they don't work in business. And MBA programs, they say, we need a 30-page paper that covers the following topics. And as an executive, as an architect, we try and figure out how we can take the 30 pages and turn it down into 2 or 1. So, but the ROI modeling they teach you in an MBA program, hugely beneficial to you. The business acumen, the how to read a financial statement, the differences between revenue and the different types of expenses, earnings before and after taxes, all this matters. How to calculate, investment opportunities, all that is going to be a huge help for you in your career. So let me go here, Melvin, what's the question? Nelson, how much can you actually make starting out? Nelson, there's a lot of determinations on that. Here's what I'm going to tell you. The best predictor of your salary is actually how well you interview and your emotional intelligence. Here's what I mean by that. Individuals with higher levels of emotional intelligence, statistically speaking, earn $29.6 thousand more per year than someone that doesn't. If you really crush or deliver the perfect interview, that can make a $10,000 to $50,000 difference in your intro salary. If you crush your first interview, there's no reason you can't get $130,000 to $160,000 starting salary easily. If you are bad at your first interview, it'll be sub $100,000, like in the $80,000 to $100,000 range. If you've got good soft skills, emotional intelligence, the $130,000 to $160,000 easily is the first job. A little bit of experience, $300,000 a year is nothing. I get people reach out to me every day for jobs that pay far more than that as a cloud architect. So it's really based upon your communication skills. That's the biggest determination of your salary. Melvin, I believe I answered your question with regards to salaries. That was also the same question that Nelson also asked. And Melvin, the MBA will also add to your salary as well. Another $10,000 to $30,000 per year. Because it will make you look like a much better consultant on paper. And as an architect, you're really a consultant. William Wallace, here's the funny thing. In those jobs that are paying very good, they're not crazy hours. It's worse hours as a junior cloud engineer. So here's the thing, as an architect, here's what the day is like, especially as you start earning higher things in the realm. Your day could literally be like this. Go meet with a client, talk to them for 2 hours, buy the client lunch on their corporate expense account. Go back home, back to the office, start your architectural design with your team. Then the next day, you're working on your design with your team, you're leading the team. And then after that, you might meet with the client for a couple hours. You may take the client out for dinner and drinks, do this. The next day, you may fly someplace, give a speech, give another speech, and fly back. That's the life of an architect. The hours where it gets long are typically related to traveling to places, but architect travel is typically pretty comfortable. If you're an architect, nobody's going to complain about the nice hotels you stay in, the good meals you eat, the good drinks you have, right? Enjoying yourself is not going to be a problem. So as an architect like that with business acumen, your days are good, they're smooth, they're fun. The less your soft skills, communication skills are, executive presence is, the harder you're going to work and the lower your salary is going to be. So that's why that's such a critical part of my program. Some of my new students want to fight me on why I'm so aggressive with these things. It's because if you focus on it, it can half the number of hours you work and double your salary. So I'm looking to build big careers for people, and these careers are dependent upon your communication skills. That's the biggest issue, William Wallace. How well you present, how well you communicate, those are the things that really, really matter. Especially if you're living in Scotland. When I met with some of the leaders of the NHS there and consulted with them, these are polite people. These are people that you've got to be exceptionally good at reading body language, even if you read the audience, because the people are so polite. So in these environments, it's really that soft skills business acumen that's going to take you to the top. Melvin, I'm so happy we're able to help you figure out how to get there. That's the reason we run these things. That's the reason we created our program. It's very sad to us that there are people that are saying, hey, by the way, to become a certified solution architect professional, take a cloud practitioner, a sysops, a DevOps. People spend 9 months of their career, which is basically the equivalent of losing $100,000 only to take the one test they should have just taken in the first place. So, we do everything we can as a community to try and guide you guys to make sure that you have access to the best things, whether you're with us or without us. Obviously, if you're with us, we have a system that we figured out that we've been working with for a long time to help people get hired, and we can do it better, faster, and cheaper than anyone else. But if you're not with us, we still want you to be successful, and that's why we're holding these sessions. Who has the next question? And I know there's the 30-second delay or so. Give you guys a moment since it looks give you guys another minute or so. Every time I think there's no questions, there's typically a lot more, so let's make sure we answer them. Melvin, could you tell me what career you desire, and that will determine what certifications you should have. For example, we never recommend certifications in a vacuum. We use certifications, Melvin, for the following reason. We use certifications to fill in a gap on your resume. For example, if you lack experience in a certain area, certification can also make up for it. And we use certifications to basically build you a focused, laser-like focused resume. So I have to know exactly the career you want. Okay, Melvin. Yeah, unfortunately, I get at least 100 phone calls per day. I can remember my students, but the people on YouTube, I just can't remember. So you want to be an architect. What kind of an architect? And Mohit, it's definitely possible, by the way. In fact, Mohit, I have students that have been with me for less than 12 weeks that have never worked a day in tech in their life, and they've already gotten cloud computing positions, so definitely. So if you want to be a cloud architect, what kind of cloud architect? Generic cloud architect, cloud network architect, cloud infrastructure architect, cloud security architect, Melvin? Cloud IAM architect, we need to be real specific. And while I'm waiting for you to tell me exactly the kind of cloud architect, and even if it's generic cloud architect, I'm fine with that. I just need to know exactly, because I don't want to give you any kind of advice that won't be in your best interest. William Wallace, 20 years experience in bond sales. That is fantastic experience. That's going to be very helpful to you. And actually, working as a medic in the Army was also very valuable experience, and here's the reason. One of the things that's really essential to cloud architects is learning the following: how to become and how to prioritize. As a medic, basically you have to triage and determine who goes to the hospital first, second, and third. That's prioritization, very good skill. As a medic, you need to learn how to stay calm in a crisis, otherwise you won't be there. As a medic, you have to learn how to quickly get to the bottom of things very quickly. And the medic, you have to control the scene and the situation. So very strong skills. In fact, I was a paramedic and practiced internal medicine before I moved into tech, and I think that plus my martial arts background made it so easy for me to do so. So, for example, that's definitely something that I would say. So you have a fairly good background, William Wallace, to hear that. Those things will translate well. Well, then it's just the key that I just need to know exactly which one. For example, if you want to be a generic cloud architect, It might just be like a Cisco Certified Network Associate or Professional plus a Certified Solution Architect Professional. If you want to be a Cloud Security Architect, it might be a CEH or a CISSP and a Certified Solution Architect Professional. But it also is dependent upon what experience you have. Because if you have a lot of networking background, for example, we might not need a networking certification. So Melvin, I am more than happy to guide you with exactly the certifications, but I need that level of depth. Plus, I need to know everything you've done in your career. Because if I know exactly what you've done, then I can help you pick the certifications that are going to fix the holes. So, Melvin, you know that I need that level of knowledge to give you something really great. Well, William Wallace, we'd love to hear from you and look forward to speaking with you. Okay, so let's go through these questions. Ms. VM, the only challenge was the communication and self-confidence, but you gave me one today. Perfect. Wonderful, Ms. VM. That's why we do these things. Mo, at being a Python, I've done a bit of coding, so trying to change my name, which is how much coding will there be? So Mohit, it determines on your job. For example, if you are a cloud architect, you will never do any coding in your entire life, ever. I've been an architect for decades and I don't code because I'm an architect. If you're a cloud engineer, you might do some Python coding. If you're in SysOps or DevOps, you will do a tremendous amount of coding specifically in Python. So that's determined. If you tell me which job you want on the cloud, then I can totally guide you, but it's based on, you know, exactly the job you want. Because then I can tell you whether you'll be coding or not. Let's see if I've answered all the questions as they were popping in. Alonzo, sure. Since security architects are in high demand, would you mind describing the prerequisites? Yeah, so being a member of SEAL Team Green. No, I'm being cute now and funny now. So serious, Alonzo, when it comes to security, it involves thinking like a security architect, which means the following. It means thinking first like an attacker. You know, how would you attack a situation? What kind of reconnaissance would you be doing, for example? What do the physical security things look like? What do the systems look like? You know, how do they work? Why do they use them? And because, you know, you need to understand how things work to understand how to how to design them. Then, typically speaking, when it comes to security knowledge, it's completely related to, what's the word I'm looking for? What is it you're trying to secure, for example? Yeah, what's the value of what you're trying to secure? Then when it comes to developing the depth of knowledge, I'm not a big fan of certifications. I like certifications because they help you get an interview. But there are two certifications that are so valid in security that I definitely recommend them. Anybody that goes and does the Offensive Security Professional or the Certified Ethical Hacker will be forced to develop a level of competency in security that's beyond anything you can imagine. They will force you to basically hack into systems. So for someone that really, really wants to move into these systems and has no background, the Certified Ethical Hacker will give you a background that is so good that employers will hire you just for having that. And then if you combine that, like Alonzo's going to combine that with the Certified Solution Architect Professional, Alonzo's got an MBA, so he's got good business acumen, and Alonzo's working very hard on his soft skills and communications. That is the ultimate winning portfolio. Now, if you've been working in security for a while and you want to do security, we like the CISSP because the CISSP is basically how you design the policy and how you do the architecture. So that's basically an architecture certification for security combined with the Certified Solutions Architect Professional. But we like that for people like me that have lots of experience in security. For people that don't have a lot of experience in security, then we typically like the CEH. And while the CEH is more of a penetration testing hacker certification, ethical hacker certification, we like that because if you're not familiar with the security, that will give you a familiarity like nothing else. We view that as like the CCIE or the Cisco Certified Internet Expert in Security. Just that proves expert level competency, and when you have that, you know, the world will listen to what you have to say from an architecture perspective, engineering perspective, or anywhere in between. I hope I answered your question there, Alonzo. And if I didn't, just please ask more. Yeah, Mohit, if you want to be an architect, An architect is all about understanding of how the systems work and how to design them, and the business and communication skills. Engineers still need communication skills, but they can get away with less because they're more engineering. Those sysops people further down the communication skills, I mean, that doesn't mean they don't have them, but they need less of them because they're basic. Sysops is basically the maintenance people of tech. They're farther away from the customers, so more tech, more scripting, more programming. And DevOps, let's face it, you need to understand a whole lot about software development, release cycles, and those kind of things. So I have a few more minutes. Is there any more questions? Any more questions for me? How often do I do which lives? So what I mean by this now, Nelson, so on 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 as many Wednesdays as we can, we do these YouTube live stream calls to answer questions. Now, every Monday and every Thursday, we do a How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar, and I'll get you in a second, Melvin. And on the cloud, and on this, which I just left the link for, we do that every Monday and Thursday. And every Tuesday, we run a Cloud Architect Challenge. That's where we basically test people to see if they have the experience to get hired. And we do a lot of architecture training as well. That's every Tuesday. So every Monday and Thursday, we do the How to Get Your First Tech Job webinar, which teaches you the steps needed to get hired. Every Tuesday, we have a fun Cloud Architect Challenge. Again, I dropped the link. Both of these things are there. And as many Wednesdays as I can, we like to do these Cloud Architect Career Question and Answer sessions. Next week, we're doing the free AWS Advanced Networking Bootcamp. And I'm going to drop the link to this free thing. And then I'm going to answer Melvin's question. Call our office as late or as early as you want, Melvin. If it's after hours, someone will just call you back. But I will tell you that we typically we leave 2 hours after every time we do one of these sessions open for calls. So if anybody's got any questions, within 2 hours, it's going to be an easy time to reach me. So that's what I would suggest. Easiest time. Who else has a question? And I'll put our office number again. Also, I will put, in case anybody is curious, we will put another link to our program as well, along with the 25% coupon code. And then so if there's more people that have questions, I will answer them. Otherwise, I will end this call and take phone calls because it looks like a lot of people want to call me. And I'm totally happy to answer as many phone calls as needed. All we want to do is get you all to your career goals. Okay, I'll give it one more minute. If there's questions in the next minute, I'll keep it open. Otherwise, we will close the call. And regardless of whether we close it, whether we open it, I'll wait to hear from you all to know more. I am super grateful to have you. Okay, there's more questions. What's the chances of hybrid cloud growth? Alexandra, 100%. So I don't like to say 100% because I don't believe in all or nothing, but the chances of hybrid cloud growth are literally 99% or greater. So ultimately what happened, there was a cloud provider that had removed somebody from their data center because they didn't like their business model. I am not here to say what's right or wrong with business models. I don't make any determinations with regards to that. I don't have any feelings either way. But I will say is that set off ripples amongst executives throughout the entire world of businesses. And ever since then, I know of no executive that's completely willing to do a pure cloud environment. They're willing to do hybrid clouds, multi-clouds, and so I think hybrid clouds, the chances of that is pretty much everywhere. Everybody that I know is either doing a hybrid cloud or multi-cloud or a lift and shift. The clouds that we see being extremely popular is Nutanix has a beautiful cloud for hybrid cloud. The IBM OpenStack Ansible, the Red Hat product, is brilliant for clouds. And we're seeing a lot of organizations adopt these clouds internally and then connecting to another cloud provider. So, do you need to know multi-clouds? Here's how we train our people, Alexandra, is we train our people in architecture. So here's what I mean by architecture. First, you meet with the client. If the client's currently running on web servers that have 128 cores and 4 terabytes of RAM, and they want to lift and shift into the cloud, we put down as our architectural module, and then all it takes, realistically speaking, it's nothing to do this. We just go to the AWS page and look at the compute instances or pick one. Go to the Azure page and pick a compute instance and look one. Go to the GCP instance and look one. So it's really important to know the cloud, Alexander. If you know the cloud, you can work on any vendor with a moment's notice. I don't have any students in my program that couldn't design an architecture and then port it to AWS, GCP, Azure, Oracle, or their own cloud they made. Why? Because if they understand the cloud, they can do it anywhere, anytime. So first, it's important to learn the cloud. Once you know the cloud, you can work anywhere. So knowledge of multiple clouds, you need a knowledge of the cloud. And all of these clouds, for the most part, are 98% the same. There's only a couple percent variation. Learn the cloud and then learning the subtleties is just silly easy. I'll give you an example. I'm a cloud architect. And I've been an architect forever. I know how everything works. I decided for fun to test our AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional book. Here's how I tested it. I said to the other co-author of the book with me, I said, we have to test our book. And he said, how? I said, I'm going to go pass the Google Professional Cloud Architect exam. And he said, but we wrote an AWS book. And I said, here's how we're going to know if the book is good. If our book is good, we should be able to pass another exam and another vendor. And my partner said, Mike, you're crazy. And I said, the cloud is the cloud is the cloud. If our book is any good, all I need to do is basically spend about a weekend to prepare and then pass the Google Professional Cloud Architect exam. So of course, like usual, my partner said I was crazy. And I said, okay, let's test it. So I bought the Cybex book. It arrived on a Friday. I had pre-scheduled the exam to be on a Monday. And I read that book on Saturday and Sunday. And I took the exam on a Monday. Within 50 minutes, I was done the exam, had lots of time to go, and easily passed it. Why? Because I knew the cloud. If you know the cloud, any cloud provider is nothing to learn. But if all you know is like the certification piece, which is the name of the service and how to configure it, it will be near impossible to work on multi-clouds. So learn the cloud, learn how it works, learn how to be a cloud architect, and then pick the name of your cloud service at a moment's notice. It is simple. Alexandra, did I explain that in a manner that made sense? And if so, would you have any subsequent questions, or did I answer your question completely? Alexandria, yes, knowing the cloud is about 1,000 times different than just learning AWS. So what do I mean by knowing the cloud? The cloud is nothing more than a virtual network in a data center, which means you must know every piece of the network in the data center, which means you need to understand routing tables, routing protocols, how to tune your traffic, when to use NAT, when not to use NAT, when to use quality of service. You need to understand that. You need to understand server architecture, how servers work. You need to understand virtualization and how it works. You need to understand containers and how it works. You need to know the difference between block storage, object storage, file storage, and how it works and when you use each type. Then you need to understand what firewalls are used for and the types of firewalls. You need to do the same thing with IDS, IPS, the same thing with VPN concentrators, the same thing with IAM systems like Microsoft AD. When you know that, just realize that everybody's using just a virtualized version of that. So it's no different on any cloud provider than it is on the cloud. So learn the cloud. Learn the network, learn the data center, you know the cloud. Once you know that, it's irrelevant which cloud you're on. You can literally make something in seconds. So like lots of times we do cloud architect challenges. And what do we do on these cloud architect challenges? It's quite simply. My program teaches the cloud. So the first thing we do is we teach you what are, I mean, we have 2 live sessions per week. It's about 250 hours in our program. We teach you what is the cloud. We teach you what is a router, what is a switch, what is a firewall, what is this. All of it. Then we have you build in our data center on real servers, just like AWS or Google does, every component of the cloud. That way you know how a firewall works, for example, or a VPN concentrator, how Microsoft Directory works. And then after that, we actually have you build your own cloud. We use the OpenStack Ansible cloud, so we have you build your own cloud. The same cloud that IBM recommends and sells, the same cloud that's done by Red Hat, the same cloud that's done in basically 60% of all hybrid cloud environments is the OpenStack Ansible cloud. So we make you do that, because after you've built the cloud, now you know the cloud. And these are skills you put down on your resume under your experience section. See, when everybody else is saying I set up an EC2 instance, no hiring manager cares about that. Nobody's going to pay you $150,000 to $300,000 a year to do that. I use an 8-year-old to do that, quite frankly. They're going to pay you to design something, and you can't design what you don't know. So that's how we teach the cloud. Then after that, sure, we have about 50 hours of AWS knowledge, but on every call that we do twice per week, we do architecture training. Alonzo's in here. There's some of my students that are in here. What do? They interview me every week, just like a cloud architect. We do this twice per week on the calls. They interview me and they ask the business, the legal, the technical requirements, my technology systems, exactly like an architect would do. Then they map out the architectural choices. Then they always, on every call, pick the services to deploy it on at least 2 clouds. One is always AWS because it's the most pervasive. And then after that, for example, after all these things, after they've learned it, they present it, and they pick it on 2 clouds. So my students always work on at least 2 clouds on every training session, which is twice per week, because 1 cloud is not enough. You need to know the cloud, and you should be able to work in hybrid cloud or multi-clouds because that's the future. So I hope I answered your question there, Alexandra. Sorry if I keep using the Greek pronunciation. I'm Greek, and everybody's Alexandra in the Greek world. So yeah, so we start from the beginning and we take you all the way to the finish line, including how to negotiate a higher salary, how to interview, everything is there. It's a one-stop shop for everything. Do you have more questions, Alexandra? Okay, well, if you do, just let me know. Any more questions for me? Okay, well, if there are any questions to me, let me know. I'll keep this open for 1 minute because I understand that it's a 30 to 45-second delay from the times you see it to the times I respond. Otherwise, I'll close it for the day. While we're waiting for any responses, if any of you guys are having a good time and you don't mind leaving a like, it definitely helps our channel out. And if you've enjoyed any of the content today, please feel free to share the link to this video with others that you think will be benefited. Later today, we have another really cool YouTube video coming out today that I'm pretty excited about. So please subscribe and hit the bell. You'll be informed of it. We also have another big video coming out on Friday, so super excited about all these things. Any last questions for me? Alonzo, you got it, but thank you for participating, especially while you're on a vacation. Thank you, Yosef. Really try and do as much as I can. Please feel free to invite friends and others that you think would be helped by what we're doing. Um, Great question. Do we have a capstone project? Of course we do. So there are 6 big projects in the program. Each of these projects is about 50 times more complicated than others are using. And welcome, but we have a big capstone project that's a full design as well. It's the kind of, but all of our what do you call it? Our architectural design projects that we do, that the students do, are all what you would call a capstone project. They might include designing an environment for a company with 20,000 remote locations, for example, or they might be dealing with a global financial training company that needs nanoseconds of latency, or they could be with a global retailer with 10,000 locations. Every one of our capstone projects is really the kind of thing that you would do as an architect with 5 to 10 years experience. So Srinivas, so definitely multiple capstone projects, but one is very significant. And every week we do 2 live instructional videos where we teach people how to do cloud migrations. So there is well over 100 hours of cloud migration training in our program, at least 100. For people that want to watch the previous cloud migration replays, there's approximately 200 hours of cloud migration training in my program. So lots and lots of cloud migration training, because that's what architects do. They design their migrations. So not only do we do that. Now, we're not going to do CI/CD stuff because that's not architecture. But we will. So we're going to do architectures. How do you take a network and a data center and move them to the cloud? CI/CD stuff is DevOps. DevOps is not architecture. We do have a DevOps person creating a DevOps engineering program on our team, but DevOps is not architecture. For people that want architecture roles, we teach architecture. For people that want engineering roles, we teach engineering. For people that want DevOps, we teach DevOps, but they're all different careers, so we try and build people the skills necessary to get hired. So I hope I answered your question. Did I answer your question, Srinivas? You got an interesting spelling of a very common name. Soul Seeker, this is a career planning session, not an AWS service to use. There's a lot of factors that would determine which service someone uses. I don't know all the considerations. I haven't spoken to the executives. I haven't determined what their goals are. I can't determine any of those things to necessarily make a recommendation. There is no tech recommendations you're ever going to make without understanding the business goals that you're trying to do. That's the architect world. What problem are you trying to solve? What is the business's goals? Where does the future desire to be? When you know all those things, then you can start exploring technology solutions. But you don't just pick a technology solution without trying to solve the problem. It's like when I used to practice medicine. I couldn't say, this is my favorite pill. Or I couldn't say, this is my favorite plane at the airport. I prescribe lots of medications, but I prescribe the medications that are appropriate for the patient's condition. When I get to the airport, I pick the plane that takes me to my ultimate destination. So with regards to which service to use, I don't know. I don't know until I know what the ultimate goal is, what the ultimate destination is, and that's based upon finding requirements. After that, it's very easy to make a recommendation, but I hope I've answered your question, Soul Seeker 319 Flare. We need that kind of information prior to making any kind of decision. That's why architecture requires such a degree of soft skills. But if you've got further questions on that, I'm happy to answer that. Srinivas, I'm thrilled we answered your question. No worries about it being out of context. We want to do everything we can to help you in your career. I just want you to understand, that's where architecture is separate from engineering. Engineering is like, pick the best tech. Architecture is, and configure it. Architecture is, analyze the business, legal, technical, regulatory requirements, design the best solution, and then have the engineers go build it for you with the best tech. So I hope that made it clear. Anyone else have any other questions? Always, every time it looks like it's quiet, I try and wait at least 1 minute. Okay, perfect. Any other questions for me? Any others? Okay. Giving it about Melvin. So glad you were able to join us. And doesn't look like there's any more questions, so I'm going to wait about 15 more seconds and then I'll end the meeting, unless a question pops in which case I'll keep it open. Regardless, it's been a real privilege to spend some time with you this morning. We love getting out there. We love taking people's questions. Anything we can do to help you in your career. I dropped the link to our program along with the coupon code, along with the number of our office in case you have any questions. So we can do whatever we can to get you to your career goals. Doesn't look like I see anything else, so thank you all for watching. Please feel free to share this discussion. And Pujan, we do this type of a QA almost every Wednesday. We've got one scheduled for next week as well. So, and as a reminder, we're doing a free AWS Advanced Networking Bootcamp next week on YouTube Live. So anybody that desires to be part of that, we'd love you to be there. Everything we do, we do as much as we can to kind of help you in your careers. So that's a free AWS networking course we're running next week. Thank you all. It's been a true pleasure to spend the morning with you. Take care, and I will see you very soon.